right, a little Thursday night Krug Show. Hope everybody's having a good day. Welcome to the Krug Show on a Thursday night. Jordan Elliot from Niners Nation is in the house. We're going to talk a little 49er football. And of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Check them out. 2 locations in Northern California. They're in Emeryville, open Wednesday through Sunday. They're open 7 days a week in Corte Madera from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in Northern California. All right. Wow, Mark Hope out of the chute. $20 super sticker. Mark, look at that. Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Jordan, good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm doing good. You know, we're inching closer. I'm shocked at how quickly the time's gone by since the combine, end of the season. You know, the draft's, right around the corner, 2 weeks away. I'm excited, man. Every day we get closer. I love draft season, so I can't wait.
Yeah, in fact, I entitled this live stream 49ers Primary Draft Need. And there's just a lot of interesting things going on in and around the draft. And let's just get right into it. First, let's hit your article, which I thought was phenomenal. People need to go to NinersNation.com. Jordan wrote a piece about the Texas running back. And no, it wasn't Bijan Robinson. It was Roshan Johnson, who's, I guess, being overlooked because of Bijan Robinson. Tell us a little bit about Roshan Johnson and why you like him so much.
Absolutely. So I think you nailed it. He's just a guy that's not getting talked about enough because there just is, I don't know if generational is the right word. I don't want to devalue that word, but Bijan Robinson's in that upper tier of running back prospect where he's so highly touted that there's a reason why he was getting as many touches as he was getting at Texas. And as a result, there were less touches for a guy like Roshan Johnson. But he's a big physical, downhill, north to south runner. But he has a ton of explosion too. Like, he's not just this big bruising back that's going to eat up tough yardage. He's really good in space. He takes care of the football. He only had 1 fumble on 448 touches across 4 seasons. So I know the ball security thing's big with the 49ers, and I think that's something that would translate really well. And he has really, really good short area quickness for how big he is and how physical he is. If you go through his tape, he's bowling over defenders. He's running through guys. He's stiff-arming defenders at the second level to the ground. But his 10-yard split ranked in the 83rd percentile at the position. And I think that that's a number that I tend to focus on when we're looking at 49ers running back prospects and potential fits with Kyle and John in this current regime. The 40 is always the number that gets talked about, I feel like, when people evaluate speed, but to me that 10-yard split has been far more of an indicator for what the 49ers seem to prefer. All 3 of the backs they took in the last 2 drafts had very good 10-yard splits relative to their size and their weight. So to me, he checks all the boxes. And the other thing that I think makes it really appealing is because Bijan Robinson was carrying so much of the load in that backfield, Johnson's a guy that you could make a strong argument you're going to get his best years on that 4-year rookie deal, which at the price point of being drafted in the 3rd round would be extremely inexpensive considering the ceiling and the dependability that he would bring to whatever franchise ends up taking him.
It's interesting. He's played 47 career games, but only 5 career starts. I mean, that's a unique thing right there. I like him. Do you hear a little?
Oh, sorry, I can mute.
Oh, okay. I'm hearing a little bit of a reverb there, but I really like Roshan Johnson as well. And when I looked at him, I just like the fact that he's a power back and has a little scoop to him. But it's an interesting position because, do the Niners need a running back? I mean, they have McCaffrey, they got Elijah Mitchell, they've got JP Mason, Ty Davis Price. I don't know on paper that they need one, but then I look at this class and I'm like, wow, Bijan's a star. I think Jahmyr Gibbs might be a star. Charbonnet from UCLA is impressive. Tyjae Spears from Tulane, terrific. Abanaconda from Pitt. I love Abanaconda. And there's others. I had Brad on this week. He really likes Sean Tucker. I think Keaton Mitchell, the East Carolina kid, is just a super speedy, incredible player. And there's a bunch of other guys further down the list that are also effective. Do you think it's likely that the Niners, Jordan, will draft a running back?
So I have a hard time gauging that right now, to be honest with you. That's one thing I was thinking about a lot, which is why I leaned on in my piece making a case for why I think they should, because I think you nailed it. They have four guys at least right now that either have shown to be dependable or somebody in Ty Davis Price that they invested a decent amount of capital in last year to take. And we can't really, it's too early to say what he will be quite yet. But the way I was looking at it and what kind of led me down this path to feeling like this is a pick I would be confident in is when you're taking guys at 99, 101, 102, the hit rate is extremely low league wide when you get to that range in the draft. And to me, yes, there's other positions that maybe have more value or where the 49ers might be a little bit thinner. But when I look at a guy like Roshan Johnson, I look at a guy where I can envision a future where this guy for the next 5 years can be a difference maker. And he's going to be a guy where I'm not going to have him on a roster bubble in training camp year to year. He's going to be on my roster for 5 years because he has a wide skill set and he has the kind of ability to just be an NFL caliber player for at least the duration of his rookie contract and feasibly beyond that. So what ultimately led me to that, Larry, is that I would rather take the running back who I feel confident can help me for half a decade than take an uber athletic prospect at another position that I don't feel as confident in the floor. And especially because they have 3 picks in such a short window, it's not like it's their only 3rd round pick and they're going to be stuck waiting till, the middle of day 3 to make another selection. They have 3 of them in a very short window. And I would feel much better if they did gamble on a couple athletic guys that maybe didn't have the production, if one of those 3 went to a player like Roshan, where you can envision an NFL future and you're going to have a role for a guy like that.
If I asked you primary need for the Niners, what jumps out at you? What would you say right now is there, if John Lynch were sitting here and we were discussing the primary needs, would he say offensive tackle? Would he say corner, safety, tight end, edge rusher? I mean, what do you think's the most pressing need? And sometimes these needs, it's like the team, what the media views the team's needs as are, and what the team views the team's needs are don't always jive. I think most of us thought they would go into last year's draft and draft a safety. They didn't look at it that way, and didn't draft one at all. What do you think? What's from where you're sitting? What's the primary need?
I would say an extremely athletic, high ceiling tackle, which they're picking at 99, right? So it's not like they have the ability to take one of these higher floor prospects in the 1st round. But to me, getting a guy who you don't have the pressure of having them start right away at right tackle, I think McKivitz is more than fine there at this point in time. And you obviously have Trent Williams on the other side. But if we're looking long term, how much longer do you have Trent Williams for? He's had an incredibly storied career. He's dealt with a lot both on and off the field. I don't think it's a given that you can look at the next 5 years and know that he's going to be the guy for every single one of those years, because he might just get to a point. He kind of hinted at retirement this past season and kind of mentioned how these seasons are starting to add up. So to me, this would be the draft to take a guy who has all the traits you're looking for and who maybe needs to be a little bit more refined, needs a little bit of polishing. And you let Chris Forster and that staff really, hone those skills in an environment where effectively you're redshirting the guy, because I don't think they'd need to step in and start right away. But already with the loss of Mike McGlinchey, if we get to a point a year or 2 from now where Trent Williams is like, you know what, I've done everything I could do on a personal level. I've made a ton of money and I'm going to get out of here while my body still is, intact the way it needs to be. The 49ers would be up a creek without a paddle if they didn't have a viable long-term solution at both tackle positions. So to me, I would take a guy right now. I would kind of swing for the fences as much as you can at the end of the 3rd round and take a guy. Like I know a lot of people really like Blake Freeland. A couple of guys I like, Wanya Morris, Tyler Steen. Some of these guys where they won't need to start right away, but they have the athletic ceiling where you can envision a long-term role for them as a starting tackle.
Yeah, I mean, if Freeland fell to them, and what do you think of the gigantic Dawan Jones from Ohio State, 6'8", 375? What do you think? I mean, that's, he's got to be able to move your feet. Is he a future guard?
I think so. I always have a hard time projecting, because a lot of these guys, I think, where it's like they get kind of pigeonholed into, they'll be a guard at the next level. I think they end up doing fine at tackle, so it's kind of tough, but I like both of them. I think they're obviously out of range for the other Ohio State tackle, but I think both of them are really good if you go and you take a look at what they've done. But I just think that to me would be the most pressing need. So identifying whatever they're looking for, because it seems like they've kind of shifted these last couple years where it's not as dependent on getting the guys who are going to be, elite in that outside zone and the agility and getting to the second level. It feels like with the amount of gap scheme and power they've been running the last couple seasons, maybe size is a bit more of a priority than it had been before, and the ability to really pull and do some things that maybe they weren't doing early on in the regime are more important. So to me, to just take the guy that, go for higher upside. The floor isn't as important because I don't think they'll be pressed into a starting role anytime soon. I think McKivitz is completely fine as of right now.
What do you see them doing at wide receiver? And you look at the wide receivers, I'd be fine if they didn't add any wide receivers. I mean, they have Debo and Ayuk and Jawan Jennings and Danny Gray, Ray McLeod. I'm a big fan of Tay Martin. I like their wide receivers. They're already probably, I don't know if there's even an opening at wide receiver, but then you look at some of the workouts. They've looked at Jonathan Mingo and I believe the Xavier Hutchinson, Brock Purdy's receiver at Iowa State's in this draft. I think they looked at Ronnie Bell from Michigan. It seems like I've seen them connected to a number of different guys, including a guy named Boogie Knight, who is down the board, but maybe a day 3 pick. Joseph Nada from Clemson is a Sacramento kid that's been working out with Brandon Ayuk. He may go undrafted. I could easily see them picking him up after the draft. And then there's a lot of Ayuk rumors out there that he could be moved. DeMario, I asked Brad about it this week. I'm like, give me a receiver you really like. And he went kind of to the slot receiver list. And he mentioned, I think, Tank Dell from Houston on DeMario from Liberty, 2 guys that I like a lot as well. What do you think? What do you think the plan is at wide receiver? And do you think there's any chance that Ayuk gets moved, because he may be if they really want a high pick, they may move Ayuk, get a high pick, and then try to replace him by drafting a receiver they like. What do you think?
The 49ers, they have a much better track record than myself, I would say, when it comes to scouting receivers and looking at guys they'd like. They've done a great job getting Debo and Ayuk, but just from whatever my opinion's worth, this is not the class I would take a risk on moving a guy like Ayuk for. There's a couple guys at the top who I like. There's some guys in the mid rounds who I like. I think it would be a massive risk. And I think that if there is a time to do it, it would be next year. And I don't know how much you would be able to move a guy like Ayuk for future capital at this point in time. Typically teams want to know a ballpark of where the pick they're getting back is going to be. But that 2024 class is loaded just across the board. I think it's a much deeper class than this. And if I recall correctly, I swear I saw something that was quoted as like Adam Peters had mentioned something that like the Niners only had like 15 first-round grades in this 2023 class. So, I just don't see an avenue to that being a move where the reward is going to outweigh the risk. I don't get the sense really that there's a ton of guys they're enamored with at the top of this class. And they've been doing this work for years on this draft board, right? Like these scouts, the college scouting department, these guys have been following this class for years now. And I don't think it's any coincidence, Larry, that number one, they were willing to move the future ones they did for Trey Lance. And number 2, they were willing to move the picks they did for Christian McCaffrey, because I think they just were like, you know what, this is a class we're okay having less picks in. We know we'll have some picks towards the back end where we feel more comfortable. We feel like there's good depth in this class. We just don't feel like this class is full of blue chip talent that we can't miss out on. So I would say it would be really risky to move Ayuk now. But he also, like on the flip side, if you are going to get an asset back that's valuable on a contract that another team can take on, that's not going to cause the financial distress of moving a different player, Ayuk's pretty much the one guy on the roster that you can do a move similar to what they did with DeForest Buckner. I just don't think getting a 2023 pick back is something that I'd be overly thrilled about. And I admittedly haven't spent a ton of time watching the top 30 guys or so because the Niners aren't picking in that range, but there's not really anybody that I've looked at that I'm like, you know what, you can move Ayuk and take a swing on this guy because it'll end up paying off 3 or 4 years from now. I just think the risk is far, far too great to do that.
Yeah, I mean it's a very speculative wide receiver group for sure, and yet I always find guys that I think are good players. And this guy that's working out with Ayuk, who plays for Clemson, is a big-bodied receiver who would be a great after the draft guy, Joseph Nada from Clemson. I could see them going for him after the draft. He's 6'3", 217 pounds. He's a phenomenal athlete. And a guy from Northern California. If he's already working out with Ayuk, maybe it makes sense. I saw a report from Yahoo's NFL reporter Charles Robinson. He reported back in January that the 49ers confidence level in Trey Lance is quote very low right now. This is back in January. And then recently he was on a podcast and said that he felt like the compensation for Trey Lance would be a second-round pick. I don't know if he's going to get moved or not. It just seems to me there was a report today out that the Texans, if Bryce Young does go number 1, that the Texans at number 2, because C.J. Stroud does not have a high score in the kind of new Wonderlic test, that if Bryce Young goes 1, and there's speculation whether that Carolina may go 1 with Bryce Young, they may just be trying to get, Houston to trade up for him. But if Bryce Young is the consensus number 1 pick, and right now he's favored to be, that maybe the Texans at 2, who are run by head coach D'Amico Ryans, right now, Nick Caserio, that they might not go with C.J. Stroud, that they may actually go with the Alabama edge player, Will Anderson Jr., with that second pick and bypass the quarterbacks there at number 2. They do have 2 number 1s. But while this is going on, there's also a lot of speculation that Bill Belichick may be losing power in New England with Robert Kraft, and that Caserio could be going back to New England to kind of run the show there with Belichick and probably being the guy who's in charge of their personnel, and that Adam Peters may replace Caserio in Houston. I guess Caserio had never even met D'Amico Ryans before Ryans was hired, so there's a speculation that maybe he was not part of the decision-making process there. But it is interesting. The Texans may wind up with a front office of D'Amico as the head coach and Adam Peters as the general manager. In that scenario, if they bypass the quarterback at 2, could you see them throwing some day 2 picks to the 49ers for Trey Lance?
Yeah, I could definitely see that being a scenario, especially depending on how much, Adam Peters is brilliant and really good at what he does. I'd imagine he had a strong say in that whole process playing out, and his input was valued, even if it wasn't his decision to ultimately make. The amount of respect that the people that do make those decisions have for Peters makes me believe he had to have some level of belief in Trey Lance for them to feel comfortable moving the picks they did and ultimately selecting him. The Texans are in a really weird spot, I feel like, because it seems like they had kind of a similar plan to the 49ers back when Kyle took over in 2017, where it's like, hey, we have holes everywhere. We're not in any rush to find our franchise quarterback because there's no quarterback we can take or acquire that's going to fix the holes we have in the other 52 spots. So it seems like they've been very diligent. They took a flyer on Davis Mills, who I liked coming out a couple years ago. I thought he had some potential. I still think he does. I think his offensive line, for the most part, hasn't really done him too many favors. Laramie Tunsil is incredible, but outside of that, I see a lot of games where he doesn't really have much time to throw. I don't think they've really done him any favors. He hasn't had an offensive-minded head coach while he's been there, so I think that's something that plays into it as well. But yeah, I could definitely see a scenario where Trey Lance would go there, but I also wonder, like, what's the time frame? Because just like you mentioned, like, it feels like Caserio and D'Amico Ryans are on different timelines, and what happens if they are like, you know what, Caserio, you've had X amount of years here, things aren't working out, but D'Amico Ryans just got there, and D'Amico Ryans is one of the bright up-and-coming real just stars in this league when we're talking about coaches. And, that's one thing when I've had the chance to talk with people from other teams and other markets and stuff, he's widely respected around the league, and that goes back to his playing days. It's not just, what he's done during his time as a coach with the 49ers. So I don't think the Texans will be in any rush to, really run him out of town. So I definitely see a scenario, Larry, where they do take a guy like Will Anderson, because I felt for a long time that Will Anderson's the best best player in this class. And if it was up to me, I would take him first overall. I like him better than any of the quarterbacks. But again, I haven't been watching as closely the last couple months. This is just from what I've been watching, on Saturdays in the fall the last couple of years. So if they do take him at 2, I can't fault them at all. I do see a scenario where maybe having Trey Lance and Davis Mills and letting them compete could end up working out well for them. And if you're investing a second-round pick, it's not like this colossal investment where you're spending the second overall pick on a guy that you don't really from what we're hearing, they don't really have a ton of conviction in. So I think that's a good way to expand the option power that you have within the room and give yourself different avenues to maybe finding that guy who finally plugs the hole for them.
It is interesting just from the standpoint, it's thought to be a top-tier quarterback draft. A lot of people like Stroud. Now, maybe Carolina's just trying to get maybe this because there's a lot of speculation that Carolina really does like Stroud. Maybe Carolina's just trying to get the Texans to trade up for Bryce Young, and if push comes to shove, they'll go with C.J. Stroud, and the Texans will go with Bryce Young number 2. But if you're the Texans and you're going Will Anderson, why would you pass on a top quarterback when you only have Davis Mills and Case Keenum at quarterback? It would make you think that they had a plan for another quarterback, and maybe that quarterback is indeed Trey Lance. From the Niner perspective, this would be a great landing spot for Trey if they wanted to move off of him. Why? Because maybe you have Adam Peters there, maybe you have D'Amico Ryans there, Bobby Slowick is the offensive coordinator. Those guys, they were just working with Trey this year, so maybe that makes sense. It is interesting from a lot of perspectives. The question I guess I would have, and one of the primary questions, and by the way, Mark Hope throwing a little super chat here. He says, showing respect. Thank you, Mark. We appreciate you, brother. Also, Mark Hope is a new member. Look at that, new channel member. There you go. Thank you, Mark, for being a new channel member of the Krueger Show. We appreciate all of our channel members for sure. The primary question that I think needs to be asked is, do the 49ers prefer a quarterback competition, this summer between Trey Lance and Sam Darnold, and eventually between, let's say, Trey Lance and Brock Purdy? Or do they prefer to commit to Brock Purdy and to move Trey Lance, maybe preferably to an AFC team where, that's rebuilding, whose timeline is a little bit more in line with his development plan? And the Texans, with a first-year head coach with a 6-year contract who run the same offense, seem like they would be a good fit. And if you sit there and say, well, what do the Texans have? The Texans have the 33rd pick in the second round, which is the second pick of the second round. They also have 2 picks in the third round. And you say, well, it seems, would the Niners make this deal? Would the Texans make this deal? I think the Texans might make the deal because the Trey Lance, I think, is probably a better player, a better quarterback than whatever quarterback they could get sitting at 33. I believe that. And then from the 49er perspective, Jordan, I'm looking at the board, and who knows who they're looking at in a trade up. But these 6 guys to me are super exciting, and they're all right in this neighborhood in the mock drafts. Kalijah Cansey from Pittsburgh, who's just crazy good defensive lineman. I don't even know exactly what spot he plays. He's just damn good. He was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year. Emmanuel Forbes, the corner from Mississippi State, who's got 14 career interceptions in 3 seasons and like 6 pick sixes. Michael Mayer, who I'm a huge fan of, the Notre Dame tight end. Isaiah Foskey, the Notre Dame defensive end, who was at their pro day yesterday. And then, not that they need a running back, but Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, is a superstar in the making at Alabama. And then I got to throw a little respect towards the guy who, to me, has looked the best of all these prospects on the D-line in the postseason, and that's this Northwestern kid, Adetomiwa Adebawore, who's 280 pounds and just looks – I mean, I can't even really describe to people what he looks like on film. He's like a super fast bulldozing player that nobody can stand in front of. He plays with such crazy power at 280. He's not really an edge rusher. He's not really a tackle, but he's just awesome either way you cut it. So, I mean, all those guys are on the board. And if you wanted one of those guys with that pick, if you said to me, what do the Niners need to get out of this draft, or what do they need to get if they traded Trey Lance? They need to get a great football player. It doesn't matter what position they play. It doesn't matter if they're a running back, a D tackle, a corner. They need if they're going to move Trey Lance, they need to move Trey Lance for a great football player. That's how they're going to get better. So, what do you think? I mean, you think the Texans could move a high second-round pick for Trey Lance? Is that too high? Would you rather have the 2/3 if they said, hey, we don't want to give you the second, but we'll give you the 2/3? Would you rather have the one high second or the 2/3?
I'd probably take the high second just because the 49ers already have 3/3. And I think there's a realistic way they could jump up 10 or 15 spots if they really like a guy and package some of those picks. I was surprised when they made the amount of selections they did last year. I thought they'd be using some of that extra ammo to move up the board a little bit. But I also, like, even a year removed from that, like, there's only so many spots on this roster for these guys coming out. They have 4 picks in the 7th round. How many of those guys realistically have a chance at not even making the roster, but the practice squad at the end of the day? Those are things you have to think about when you're making these kind of decisions. So I would definitely take the higher ceiling that you probably get with a player going at 33. The thing that's kind of interesting to me, though, is where's the divide, right? Because these reports don't just come out of nowhere. And especially with someone like Charles Robinson, for people who don't know, is a very, very respected reporter. He's not somebody that's ever going to put something out that just is, clickbait rumors from, there's substance to whatever is being reported by somebody like that. And it doesn't mean that everybody at an organizational level has, lost belief or they're not as high on Trey Lance as they once were or whatever it may be, but it's coming from somewhere. And I think that there has been plenty that we've seen since then that would kind of indicate that, hey, the confidence level isn't where you'd probably want it to be for a guy that they invested that much capital in. So I'd be curious how much, hypothetically Adam Peters and, realistically D'Amico Ryans, who's already there, like, what's their feeling on it? Because I wonder how much they would want to be investing in a player like that. But just in terms of not just the Texans in general, I saw Isaiah Foskey at the pro day yesterday, and he's big. He's a guy that, you look at and you're like, oh man, you pair this guy on the other side of Bosa, you have him rotating with Drake Jackson. That'd be a dynamic pairing. It would be very difficult for opposing offenses to game plan for that. And I think a lot of these guys, a lot of the meetings they do and a lot of the stuff they do in the pre-draft process, it's just good business to meet with as many teams as possible. But I did think it was interesting that he was there meeting with them. He wasn't working out. The Niners are so far out of the range of where he's projected to go.
Right. What's
I'm
he
kind
doing
of like,
there?
is this just due diligence in case we do end up in the 2nd round? Because this is a player that fits what we like to do. And that's something where it's kind of like, I don't think that means like they have some, under the table handshake deal that's already in place. But I definitely think it's like, hey, if we do end up moving a guy that we could get back this range of pick for, we need to do some homework on some prospects there, while also not wasting top 30 visits on a pick or a player going in a pick that we don't have currently in our arsenal. So it's kind of like, hey, we might have a pick at 33. Let's get this guy in here and meet with him on something that won't count against those top 30 visits. We'll use the top 30 visits for the guys projected to go in the range. We already have somebody. So I do wonder if that's something that kind of factored in, if that makes sense.
Those guys that I named, Cansey, Forbes, Michael Mayer, Foskey, Atabare, Jahmyr Gibbs, excuse me, those are the guys that I project as special, but in that range. But what do you think? I mean, you were at Indy. You've watched a lot of these all-star games. You watch a lot of college football. What do you think of that group of guys? Do you think those guys would be there? Do you like any of those guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely like a couple of them that I've been able to watch a little bit more. Cansey is a guy that's he's incredible. He's incredibly slippery. His burst is ridiculous for a guy, they had, like you said, they had him lining up all over. I've seen snaps of him playing 4-eye, snaps of him playing 3-tech, where they're getting him in on guard centers, and his explosion and his ability to disrupt plays in the backfield is something that it's special. And I think that he's one of the guys I'm watching closely because the skill set is great, but I think the measurables is something where it's kind of like, I don't want to say undersized, but it feels like, that's the one knock that I've heard kind of repeatedly is that if he was just a few inches bigger, he would be a guy that would be a top 5 pick in the class based on his production and just the blazing 40 time he had. and all that. I think Mayer's a really intriguing tight end prospect, but I'll be honest, I'm a little biased towards Darnell Washington out of Georgia. I think he's a guy that would be tremendous if the 49ers were able to take him, especially given how much they love to run the football. He's an absolute specimen, just an incredibly athletically gifted player. And he's somebody who I think would fit their culture very well. On top of that, he's very comparable to Mercedes Lewis coming out, who had a very good NFL career, was a really, really good prospect coming out when Jacksonville took him. It feels like almost 20 years ago that happened. So he's the guy I kind of lean towards. And then Forbes is another guy who I've had the chance to watch. You can never have too many good corners in this league. And as good as Diamador Lenore was, and as good as Mooney Ward is, I would have no fault at all if they moved up to get a guy like that. So I definitely like a handful of those guys that you mentioned. And I think that it would be much more beneficial to take a swing on one of those prospects rather than swinging twice earlier in the third round if it was 1 second or 2/3.
And back to the original question, do the 49ers, do you think, want a quarterback competition between Purdy and or between, Lance and Darnold, and do they want one between Lance and Purdy, or do they want to they seem like they've made an evaluation that Brock is their guy based on what they've seen, and it seems like nobody asked them if they want. I think that was the question that was begging to be asked to John or Kyle that I would have loved to hear the answer to. Do you want a competition at quarterback, or do you want to make Brock Purdy your starter?
Yeah, so I would almost answer that with another question, Larry. And this is kind of what I've been wondering since Darnold was signed and since we got the leader in the clubhouse comments from John Lynch. What exactly can Trey Lance or Sam Darnold do in OTAs in May and mini camp in June and training camp in August that's going to move the 49ers brass to a point where it's going to supersede what Brock Purdy did in December and January with the division on the line, on the road in Seattle, playing a really tough opponent in Dallas, finding a way to win that game? Like, what exactly are these guys supposed to do while they're, out there working out in shorts and a t-shirt that's going to overcome what they saw from Brock Purdy at the highest level that's given them this belief in him? And that's kind of where it's like, I'm kind of like trying to find that answer myself, Larry, where I'm like, Trey Lance could go out and he could be really accurate in camp. He could be very decisive with his reads. He could look really good, but it feels like no matter what he does or whatever Sam Darnold does, if Purdy's healthy, what he did down the stretch of last season is going to hold more weight than whatever these other two guys do. So I feel like we can't even call it a competition at that point because it feels like it's a 100-meter relay and they're giving Brock Purdy a 50-meter head start. So it's like whatever these guys end up doing, I don't see how it's going to be able to move them to get past the conviction they have in Purdy that's so clearly evident right now.
Like, if you ask me, do the Niners want a quarterback competition between Brock and Trey? I would say no. And if you asked me, do you think that they want to commit to Brock and maybe move Trey to a team that would allow him to play right away, that probably was in the AFC, I'd say yes. And now you got the Texans sitting there with no quarterback, maybe going to pass on the top quarterbacks with D'Amico and Peters and Slowick. To me, it just sets up that the Texans may make a big play for Lance, and it probably would be a smart play on their behalf to do so, especially since they don't really have a quarterback, and if they don't have a real conviction, I'd much rather invest a second-round pick in Trey Lance than a top 5 pick in a speculative quarterback class if you don't just totally love the player. So that's really interesting. The other part of this that makes things kind of interesting is Kyle Shanahan suggested that he may take 2 quarterbacks. He said that in Arizona. Well, they currently have 3, and now they're also, according to reports, had multiple pre-draft workouts with UCLA's Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the man everybody kind of knows affectionately as DTR, who's a good prospect in his own right. Bishop Gorman High School. This guy's he's played a lot of football. 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. Played 5 years at UCLA. What do you make of their interest in DTR?
I love it. I'm a big DTR guy. I've watched him for the last few years, big Pac-12 guy, a lot of Pac-12 after dark games where I feel like A lot of people on the East Coast don't get to see those games, and they haven't gotten to see what DTR has been able to do. And I just think that it's good to do due diligence every year. I know they throw that word around a ton, but it's good to do due diligence on quarterbacks every year, especially given the turnover they've had. But, for whatever it's worth, I had the chance to speak with DTR and Indy. And when I asked them about the 49ers, they had met at the East West Shrine Bowl in Vegas. And, for whatever you want to read into, body language, whatever, he perked up a little bit. He had a big smile on his face when he was talking about the 49ers, talked about the interest they had in him and how much they liked him and he liked them. And it's hard to fault the guy. You look at what Kyle Shanahan's done with some quarterbacks who haven't really had success elsewhere and how much he sets up players in that position for success. Who wouldn't want to come play for them? So I definitely think there's something to it. They had Tanner McKee and Jake Hayner and a quarterback from Houston. I apologize, I'm blanking on his name. It wasn't Clayton Tune. It was another quarterback.
Ogbago or something like that.
Yeah. I apologize for not remembering the name. And they were looking pretty intently. Kyle, John, Adam Peters, they were all out there watching those guys throw. So I think they're just at a point now where it's like maybe they saw the value in getting a guy that has the experience and has the smarts, that maybe doesn't have the physical traits that are going to jump out, that are going to leapfrog him to, the first round. But I think Kyle knows deep down and has for some time that his system is doing a lot of the legwork. And I think that's why they've made a lot of the moves they made at quarterback and why they felt so comfortable making Jimmy the guy, because he knows that these guys aren't going to be counted on to make 15, 20 plays a game where they're putting this offense on their back. They might have to do that a handful of times, but the scheme's going to take care of so much that I almost wonder if they're just getting to this model of roster building where they're like, hey, we'll invest, big money into the D line. We'll invest big money into the skill position guys. We paid Debo. We paid Fred Warner a ton of money. He's this transcendent talent. Maybe we can get by just cycling through dependable rookies on rookie contracts at the quarterback position. Whether or not that's a feasible model to carry out over the course of 5 to 10 years, that remains to be seen. But I think the success that they had with Brock Purdy changed their mind on how they're evaluating that process going forward. And I think they saw an avenue where we don't have to lose all the talent we've accumulated. We just need to find a guy that can execute the offense and just kind of pilot this, juggernaut of an offense that we've amassed with all the players we've had to pay at other positions.
DTR in the mocks that I'm looking at is listed at pick number 130. The Niners picked 99, 101, 102. Those three picks in the third round. Are they going quarterback in the third round? First of all, if they go quarterback in the third round, they will have already traded Trey Lance, right? There's no question about that. There's no way they're going to have Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, and go quarterback in the third round, right?
Yeah, that would be kind of inexcusable at that point, right? Because there's no way you're going to roster four. Unless they're comfortable kind of doing what they did with Nate Sudfeld with Sam Darnold, where they're like, hey, we'll bring him in. If it doesn't work out, we'll just cut him and eat the guaranteed money we, had agreed to. Yeah, I just don't see any way where you could justify caring for, even after the, shell shock that remains going to a fourth quarterback in an NFC Championship game. There's no way to justify that. That was just a horrible, unfortunate string of bad luck that you'd like to think won't replicate itself anytime soon. I do think, though, that with those three picks, there might be a team that wants to move up, or maybe they could move back to 120, 125, 130. Maybe they take him there. But if they're spending a day, early day 3 or a late day 2 pick on a quarterback, it would have to be there has to be somebody that's the odd man out who's there among the current 3 right now.
DTR is interesting. I could see them. You're saying, well, if they made this move, if they somehow moved Trey Lance to the Texans, went with Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, and somehow drafted DTR, what would they say about it? What would they say their philosophy is? And I just think looking at DTR's profile and track record, they would say that the need for movement ability and athleticism they think is key. But I think they would draw the distinction as we've learned that college experience means a lot, because ultimately what was Brock Purdy? He was a 4-year starter at Iowa State, and he's obviously had a lot of success. Where do they, if they did go wrong with Trey Lance, and I personally think that Trey Lance is going to be good still, but if you wanted to say that Trey Lance was a bust or Trey Lance wasn't going to be good, You could say, well, where did they miss? Well, he was only really didn't play a lot. He's like kind of a 1 year guy. So maybe they would point to, look, DTR has played, 5 years of big time college football. He's an athlete and he has lots of quarterback experience. I could see that being kind of their pivot point. Um, as far as the quarterbacks and the rules, from what you know, are they going to allow three? Is there going to be a special exemption for the third quarterback? Are they going to change the rules? They tabled it at the NFL's owners meetings until May. Do you think we're going to see them change the rules on that third quarterback? Kyle referenced having two. Do you think it's going to, if the Niners will they go with three quarterbacks like they did last year on the roster? Will they go with two and then want one on the practice squad? Does a rookie then become kind of more of a prominent option if that's the rule, if that's the way the roster kind of comes down? How do you see that? It looks like you're muted.
There's first of all, the NFL, there's absolutely no reason for them to not pass a law like that through. Ultimately, what it did was in one of their biggest games of the year, that's one of their biggest, streams of revenue. A lot of people outside, even people in the Philadelphia and San Francisco markets tuned out, but the national audience probably tuned out pretty quickly once it became evident the 49ers had a guy that couldn't complete a forward pass, and the game was effectively over with 12 minutes left in the third quarter. So I think there's no way that you can justify it, because all the arguments you could make for how much better it is, not only for each team, but for the product itself, will far outweigh whatever negatives that would be brought up in that scenario. So they absolutely should. There should never be a situation where we're watching a playoff game and the running back has to get the green dot helmet with the mic in it because there's literally not an able-bodied quarterback. That just shouldn't be a problem in the NFL. So I think that would be my biggest selling point if I'm trying to push that rule through. And then as for the Niners, I think they absolutely will. I expected them to carry three last year, so I was kind of surprised when they didn't. I think they'll have the three this year, and I think they'll just eat one of those, game day inactives just based on what we've seen. But with the practice squad stuff, how confident are you that one of those guys isn't going to get poached now? And, maybe it was a little different because teams didn't know what Brock Purdy would be, but I feel like if teams knew what that was ultimately going to turn into, he wouldn't have been sitting on that, practice squad.
Can't you protect like two guys a week?
I believe so.
So isn't that what happened this year? Was Brock on the practice squad or was he on the active roster?
I think they only had two going, and I could be wrong though. I'm sorry, I'm blanking off the top of my head.
I thought they kept three on the active roster because to put him on the practice squad meant he would have to clear waivers, and they never put him through waivers. That I saw, if they did, or maybe they put him on the practice squad and then were immediately able to protect two guys, and they just protected him every week.
No, you're right. They didn't. I apologize. That's my error. No, he was on the active roster. My apologies.
He was on the active roster.
Yeah, he was. I think he was inactive. I think that's where I got it messed up. I'm pretty sure he was inactive the first couple weeks.
Right. But if they change the rules this year and they allow for an extra quarterback, that's one thing. Otherwise, I'm not really getting the multiple meetings with Dorian Thompson-Robinson if you're keeping all your existing quarterbacks. That kind of makes it all the more kind of curious about what direction they're going. A couple super chats. Luke Luna says $2. Have you watched Xavier Smith, number 19 for Florida A&M? I did see him in the HBCU All-Star game. If it's the guy I'm thinking of, very electric player, very exciting. The guy that I loved, though, in that All-Star game was Stephon Pierre, the linebacker from Albany State. Everybody's got to go check him out. He's a tremendous player. Scotty Dippin says, no faith in the 49ers to do the right thing at quarterback. I don't know. I mean, somebody in there decided they like Brock Purdy. Scott Fowler says, what's your percentage on Brock getting injured again? It's football. I'd say 100%, right? If you said at all, ever, I'd say 100%. Bomber T, DTR has touch on the ball as well. Yeah, do you see DTR as a starter, as a backup, as a developmental quarterback strictly? I mean, he's 6'2", but he's a little bit diminutive. He doesn't have the biggest frame. He's got more of like a Robert Griffin type frame. He's 6'2", but he's very, very lean.
Yeah, I think he's a guy like I'm big on rushing floor, Larry. Like I think any quarterback that can extend plays with their legs, buy time, scramble, and things aren't there, immediately bring a level of dependability that players who just can't do that are unable to. So I think he's a guy where if you are in a similar position to last year, and you have to throw him out there in week 10 or week 11, I think he has the ability to improvise on the go and the athletic traits that even if there's a little bit of a learning curve, which should be expected for any player in their first year as a starter, I think he has the traits that would allow him to give them at least a high floor on offense because he has the ability to do those things. I do think it remains to be seen how much the way he was making Pac-12 defenders miss. It's going to be a lot harder to do that in the NFL, but he has a really, really incredible amount of tape that you can go back on and look and see some stuff that it's easy to fall in love with if you're a scout or a front office or coach, whatever it may be. So I think he's a guy who has the potential to come in as a backup maybe early and maybe develop into a starter. But he's a guy I would want on my roster for sure, because I think he's somebody, if you had to go to the well and you had to kind of, break the glass in case of emergency and throw him out, even if he is the third quarterback, I think you could win games with him in year one. And I think that's where the 49ers are at now. They just need every quarterback that's on their roster to be able to step in and do just enough for the rest of that loaded roster to win football games. And maybe they feel more confident in that after what we saw with Brock Purdy, because I know you really liked him during camp. I definitely saw some things that I liked. I'd be lying if I said I thought he was going to rattle off 7 straight wins and go into a hostile environment in Seattle and do all the things he did. So I think the way he went about that and did that really changed the course of thinking for not only the 49ers, but I know it did for myself too, where I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, as good as Brock Purdy was, he didn't have to do everything. He was able to lean on a lot of these other players on the roster. The defense played out of their minds. And if I'm looking at this team this year, I don't feel like it would be any different if it was DTR in that same position in week 13 or whenever it was.
It's funny. My son put together an Instagram reel of a video that I did on Brock Purdy based on some numbers that I saw on the NFL Network's Path to the Draft. And the video on IG has 138,000 views right now. And all it was, and I don't know if you saw this was the other day, Bucky Brooks and those guys were on Path to the Draft, and they have Eric DeCosta, the general manager of the Baltimore Ravens, and he comes out in the segment and he's like, we're looking for a quarterback on round 3, day 3, and you got to have real good instincts to find one. And heck, look at San Francisco. Look what they did last year with Brock Purdy. And then John Schneider, who I think I was from following you. You had the video, I think, of John Schneider at the Combine talking about Brock Purdy, and it seemed like Schneider had this tremendous respect for what Purdy had been able to do. But right after they showed that video of DeCosta, they go to this discussion about, is Jay Kaner the next Brock Purdy and the whole thing. That's totally picturable. But then they have a graphic on here, and it's like by passer rating where Brock Purdy was rated in situational football in 5 different categories last year. Play action, they had his quarterback rating at 130.3. In rhythm, they had his quarterback rating at 125.2. When shifts or motions were part of the play, they had the rating at 118.3. When he was throwing outside the numbers, they had his quarterback rating at 112.9. And when he wasn't blitzed, they had his quarterback rating at 112.6. The interesting thing about those numbers was that all 5 of those numbers ranked first in the NFL, in the entire league, over Mahomes, over Herbert, over everybody. To me, that right there, if you people sitting there going, man, I liked Brock Purdy, but man, what is Shanahan and Lynch seeing that they're going to just not even entertain a competition and just anoint this guy the number 1 guy? Those numbers are pretty spectacular. Number 1 in the NFL for a 7th round draft choice rookie thrown into the action 2 months after his last previous action was in the preseason. He gets thrown in first week in December and puts up the best numbers in football. That's staggering. What do you think? I mean, when you hear those numbers, does that paint the picture a little bit better of why Lynch and Shanahan were so, or seemed to be so, all in on Brock?
Yeah, I think it definitely adds, an objective context to things that, with numbers, there's obviously context behind numbers, but I think it adds a layer of, um, there's a lot of subjective opinions about it, but it's really hard to dispute tangible evidence like having numbers like that. To me, the thing that stood out the most when I was watching him was he just looked more comfortable within the structure of the offense. And I'm a big proponent of how much the scheme itself is doing the work with this offense and how much it puts guys in position to succeed. And even though it may be easier for 49ers quarterbacks compared to the other 31 based on how much that scheme's working, I've seen plenty of guys who weren't able to do what Brock Purdy was doing and who weren't able to make something out of nothing when the first read wasn't there or there was pressure coming up the middle. The biggest one to me that I keep coming back to was when I really bought into Brock Purdy was that game against Miami, and Miami has a fire zone blitz coming, and he never looked at the pressure that was coming off the edge. He saw one of the defensive linemen dropping, and I don't know if it was a film study thing or if it's just from the amount of experience he has. He recognized that, that kind of blitz, but he knew because that D lineman was dropping that there was a good chance there was pressure coming off the edge, and he got the ball out before he got drilled. And that's something where there's plenty of quarterbacks we've seen on the 49ers under Shanahan where they probably get drilled there coming off the blind side and they end up getting, or I apologize, I think it was coming off the right side, but they get drilled without seeing that pressure coming, and it's a sack, it's a fumble, they panic and make an errant throw, and he calmly delivered a ball that I think it was Kittle, and ended up being a nice gain. And I sat there and I'm like, I don't think he ever saw that pressure coming. He knew in that second and a half, 2 seconds, whatever it is you have to get the ball out, that based on what he was seeing in front of him, the numbers didn't add up and there was going to be pressure coming. And I think that's where, we're hearing all this talk about the S2 test and the cognitive ability, but that's why this stuff matters, I feel like, a lot, because you really need to be able to process so fast at that level. And that was just the first tangible example I'd seen of Purdy in that regular season environment where it was like, whoa, like there's something to this. And we just get so caught up, I feel like, Larry, in arm strength and the ability to, we're seeing Josh Allen roll out and stiff arm defenders to the ground before throwing a ball 45 yards on a rope. Josh Allen's fantastic. I love watching him play football, but not every quarterback has to win that way. And I think the biggest thing with Brock Purdy is that he's a great reminder to not only us as, people around the 49ers, but the league in general, that there's so much more to playing that position than just having a big arm or having physical traits or being really tall. And he just does so many of the things that are hard to quantify really well. And I think that you having those numbers is good evidence to the things that he's doing really well that are a little bit harder to quantify.
One thing I would like to see, by the way, Mark Hope throws a super chat, his Larry and son. I don't think he's referring to you as son. My son makes a bunch of videos for me on the channel. There's a number of interesting angles on this draft that I think the Niner pre-draft interviews are making me kind of wonder about. They brought in Keandre Coburn the other day. Keandre Coburn is kind of like DJ Jones. He's 6'1", he's 330, played at Texas, next to Ajomo on that line, and he's just a big, strong guy who's got a little bit more pass rush. He showed it he's a two-down player, but he showed a little pass rush this year. But to me, that kind of, they're already 6 deep at defensive tackle. That's when I saw them interested in him and interviewing him, it really makes me wonder if they're going to trade Javon Kinlaw during the draft, because they're already 6 deep there, and I could see them moving Kinlaw for like a 5th or 6th round pick. I don't think you'd get more. But I also think Coburn could be potentially on the board in the 5th or 6th round, and I could see them wanting to kind of, move off Kinlaw, but not necessarily not have that two-gapper player that can stand in against the run. They don't have that many guys like that. They got a lot of one-gap penetrators on their front. What did you think of them interviewing Coburn? Do you see that the same way I do, that maybe that's an indication that Kinlaw's on the way out, or do you think Kinlaw's going to be here?
I think Kinlaw is going to be here. I still believe that he's a guy who we haven't really gotten the chance to see what he's going to be capable of in the long run, because he's just had really bad injury luck. I think some great perspective for me. I talked to Dr. Nirav Pandya. He's an orthopedic surgeon at UCSF. And I talked to him at length. He's also a big 49ers fan, so he's followed the Kinlaw thing really closely. And we talked about ACL reconstruction and how, the process that went into it where, there's a lot more behind the scenes that we don't know, obviously, but it could have just been something as simple as the first couple remedies weren't what needed to be done. That ACL reconstruction was really what was going to be the ultimate remedy that was needed, and how players really don't find their footing until the second year back. And it's amplified even more for guys who are a lot bigger. So even though he was working out and he looked good during training camp and, he was on the field early to start last season, he had mentioned that not only the timetable it takes to get back, but the swelling and some of the fluid buildup that had been reported early last season. He's like, that's kind of par for the course until you really hit that 18-month mark, which he should be coming up on now. I think it was April, middle of April. So any week now is kind of that 18-month mark from when Kinlaw had surgery. He said that's when an athlete really gets back to themselves and they can start feeling more comfortable making some of the cuts and sudden twitch movements, that even though they're doing tons of physical therapy and all the rehab that went into it, that's the time frame that he was very emphatic on being the real tell of what to expect. So he basically made it seem like last season wasn't the best time to gauge how he'll play going forward. And he was reiterating that the fact he was even on the field is a good sign of progress. But he made it seem to me like the biggest tell will be this coming season. He pretty much was like, you'll know in the next 6 months what his future will hold. And if these flare-ups continue to happen, once you start getting to the 24-month mark, it's been 2 years removed, that's when it's a situation where that knee is never really going to clear up. So long story short, I didn't mean to ramble here, but long story short, pretty much
not at all.
The way I look at it, if that's the medical diagnosis and that's something that's pretty par for the course for a big guy with that ACL reconstruction, if I'm the 49ers, you've stuck it out this long, stick it out 6 more months. Just like you said, I don't think the capital you'd be getting back in return necessarily makes it worth moving off of him. And on the off chance that, he does recover and he does fall in line with the more typical ACL reconstruction recovery for a guy of that size, I still think he can be a contributor on this defense. I still think he has physical gifts that can't be taught. And I think that he can be a player where he will be in a role that's not going to be as much as going to be asked of him, because there are so many contributors on that defensive line, and you can get more efficiency out of him. You limit his snaps, you cut down the number of times he's on the field compared to last year, and you might get a guy who's going to stay healthier, who's going to be more efficient with the snaps he's given. And hey, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I'm not losing sleep at night over missing out on a 6th round pick when I have 2 5th rounders, 4 7th rounders, the 6th rounder. So I think that at this point, you didn't pick up the 5th year option, see what you have. And if your worst case scenario is, hey, he did recover well, he started to show some flashes of potential, we might not be able to afford him next season because other teams are coming knocking to get him now. That's a great problem to have. And I think that I'd much rather just stick with him at this point.
Scott Fowler says Kinlaw's cap hit is $10.5 million next year. I don't know. I just think personality wise, I could see them moving on from Kinlaw, especially since they have Hargrave and Armstead and they got other guys. A couple things. One of the things that I would love is I would love it if every 49er content creator would go on record, because I just feel like the way this is going to go on the Trey Lance thing is everybody kind of just is going to either go along with whatever, and then they're going to have this revisionist history. I'd like everybody to be on the record as I think Trey Lance is going to be a good NFL quarterback, or B, I don't. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't know if I want, I don't know if, I'd like, it's like I get the feeling that if he's a bust, we're going to hear this. Well, everybody kind of knew. No, you know what I mean? That he was a bust. Well, and yet the pushback when I even suggested that they might trade him was like, you're an idiot. And then it was also kind of like, he's not worth anything. I got 2 responses. You can't trade him. My God, that's a terrible idea. And he's not worth anything. So, like, what is it? You know what I mean? I just get the feeling that there's people that don't really have any conviction on if Trey Lance is good or not, and they're just going to kind of go with whatever happens. If he's bad, they're just going to be like, you never had it. Or if he's good, they're going to be like, people gave up on him. You know what I mean? It's like you get the feeling that there's a lot of people out there that really haven't stated one way or another if they either believe that Trey's good or they believe that Trey ain't. I don't know. Personally, I'd love everybody to be on record on that one point.
Man, full transparency, I'm probably guilty of that myself because to be honest with you, Larry, I'm kind of at the point where it's like I definitely haven't seen enough to make me think like, oh, this guy's going to be special. I always hear people talk about how the 49ers need this incredible talent. Brock Purdy's not enough. They need this guy that's going to be a top 5 QB to get over the top. And I'm like, what have you watched that makes you believe that this guy is going to be a top 5 QB? And if the 49ers felt similarly or other teams felt similarly, he'd probably be either on a different team starting for them now, or the Niners there would be no question who their starter is. And I also haven't seen, enough to really feel like I don't think he'll ever be good. But I definitely would say I think there's a reason why the 49ers don't have the belief that they have. And just from some things that I've heard, I just think that some of he's an extremely hard worker. I think they believe that. He's very bright. I just think that there's some things that can't be taught and can't be that are much more difficult to fix, right? And when we talk about accuracy and ball placement and some of those things, there's some reps that Trey Lance has on tape where it's phenomenal and he's putting balls into very tight windows and it looks really good. But I think there's a consistency issue there, and we just haven't gotten the chance to see how it will play out in the long run. So I don't want to give you some long-winded answer where I, at the end of it, don't fall one way or the other. But I would just say that I think that as of this point in time, I can't sit here and be like, I think he's going to be this great NFL quarterback. I just haven't seen enough to make me feel that way. I'd love to be, I guess, proven wrong. I don't know if that's the right word, but I can't sit here after 4 games and be like, yeah, I saw enough to make me think this guy's going to be really special.
It's not an easy evaluation. It really isn't. I would say, based on what I know about the kid and what I've seen, that I really think he's going to be good. And I would put my name to it that I think before it's all said and done, I think he's going to be a very good NFL quarterback. I really believe that. But I got a buddy of mine who is a quarterback coach for a major college who called me after seeing all the hubbub on my Twitter and on Twitter about the throwing. And he just said, there's all kinds of bad movement there. There's all kinds of issues with the way he's throwing. I feel like I know a lot about football, but I'm not going to sit there and critique a quarterback's mechanics and try to pretend like I know. There's a lot of different ways to do it. The other thing that I heard is that, people talking about this motion over and over again. How many times in the course of a game, if you throw the ball 15 times, how many times do you actually get to make a clean throw the way you want to make it? You got to make all kinds of throws and throw around arms and legs and you're throwing any way you can to get the ball out on many plays. So it's like to see a perfect motion and be like, oh, he's now got the motion. We're all ready. Everything's perfect. It's like, even if it was perfect, it's like there's so much more to playing quarterback than just that. Give me a player that you absolutely love in this upcoming draft that is not getting that much love. I have one that I have circled on that he's not getting a ton of love. He's projected in like the 4th or 5th round, and I see a phenomenal player. Give me one that you have, and I'll throw you mine, or I can go first. Either one.
Yeah, if you want to go first, I'd love to hear yours, actually, if you don't mind.
Yeah, to me, the guy who the more I watch, the more I think, wow, this guy's got a lot of talent, is Byron Young. And I'm not talking about the Tennessee Byron Young. I'm talking about the Alabama Byron Young, who's 6'2", 300 pounds. He's from a small West Jones High School in Mississippi. He was a 4-star recruit, heavily recruited. Bama took him out of the state of Mississippi. And if you watch him, he wore 47 for Bama. And it's just like, I just feel like this guy got lost in the shuffle at Bama with all these other awesome athletes. He did have a good senior year. He was invited to the Senior Bowl. He's got 34 3/8-inch arms, super long arms. He's kind of a combo defensive end, defensive tackle, really good against the run, according to PFF. But what I love is he plays with balance, plays the game on his feet, never gets knocked down for the most part. He's got this natural strength, this natural burst. He can separate from offensive linemen. He's got a crazy motor. He had a great run stuff, grade by PFF, but only a 12.5% pass rush win rate. awesome against Ole Miss in that game. I watched it. He's got 11-inch hands, 24 reps on the bench, 7.68 3-cone drill at 300 pounds, scheme versatile. I just see what I see is just a 290-pound guy who moves exceptionally well, enormously strong hands, long arms, plays with leverage, could lean down and play defensive end in a lot of schemes. I think he could bulk up and play an interior rusher in a number of schemes. I see a very versatile, athletic 300-pound lineman who just kind of blended in at Bama because they got so many incredible talents there. And I think he's going to wind up late third, maybe, to early fifth in that range. And I think he's a steal. I think he's going to be a terrific rotational lineman who can play in a lot of schemes. I could see the Niners using him like first and second down at defensive end. He's awesome on these twists and these stunts. Or you could use him as a rotation player, kind of like a combination of Givens and Kentavious Street. He doesn't anchor awesome, but he's good against the run and really a lot of I think he's a sleeper as a pass rusher. I don't know if you saw him at all in Indy.
Yeah, definitely. And it was beyond confusing too, because I think there's multiple guys in this draft that have the same name, if I remember correctly.
Right. So Tennessee's edge rusher is Byron Young, and he looked great at Indy too, but he's 250 pounds and a little bit smaller.
Yeah, so I love that you clarified. Yeah, I definitely, I think it's a great pick. He's definitely something that stood out to me. And, I think it's funny because we're at the point where it's like people are like, oh, how many defensive linemen do they need? More. The answer is always more. I think that they should take as many as possible, utilize the resource that is Chris Kosaric and now Darryl Tapp there as well, as long as you can. And we've seen guys just have incredible production with that unit, and the stronger it is around these guys coming in, the easier life's going to be on them from day one. So I'm with you. I think every single draft they should be targeting defensive linemen, whether that's guys who are going to be, early down guys that are going to be more responsible for plugging gaps in the middle, or guys that they're expecting to bend off the edge. I don't care. Take all of them. They could literally take a defensive lineman with all 11 picks, and I wouldn't have a problem with it because of how valuable I think it is for this team.
How about you? Do you have anybody? I mean, you were at the Combine, actually had a chance to talk to a number of these guys, and I know you mentioned Jamie Robinson out of Florida State, and I know you've had a chance to kind of get a feel. A lot of times what you're really looking for is just kind of what's the essence of the person and the player, right? And sometimes that can be gleaned by watching film. Sometimes it can be gleaned in a conversation. Sometimes it can be gleaned by watching, workouts against a constant backdrop. You need all the pieces of the puzzle to make the evaluation, but any one thing could sway me if it was strong enough in a particular direction. What do you think? Is there anybody in Indy that you're like, man, that guy would be a perfect 49er? I threw this to Brad the other day. We were talking about receivers, and he threw out Demario Douglas from Liberty, which is a phenomenal little stop and start player who I really, really like. But anybody who would you say is just a great fit for the Niners?
So I'm trying to pick. Do you mind if I give you one from each side of the ball, because I'm having trouble picking between two? So on the topic of receivers, and Brad's brilliant. I love talking. That's how Brad and I actually crossed paths a few years ago, was just pre-draft talk and stuff. I'm a big fan of Douglas, but the guy for me that I think has a really high ceiling, and I think is going to be a steal for whoever gets him, is Bryce Ford Wheaton out of West Virginia.
Huge and fast.
Incredible testing numbers. He's 6'4", ran a 4.38. His RAS, the relative athletic score, which I think paints a good picture of the overall athletic profile, ranked 11 out of 3,020 wide receivers from 1987 until this current class. So he's in the upper tier of just guys. They don't make guys like that are that big and that fast. And I think that he's somebody where when you're looking at the 49ers wide receiver room, that's maybe something that they don't have, that big-bodied target who also has that top-end speed as well. And I think that he's the kind of guy where if you are picking in the third round or the fourth round and he's there, take a swing on a guy like that, because you're not going to be overly reliant on him being a guy to come in and produce right away. But, man, if you can develop him with whoever you end up finding out to be the quarterback in the long term, you can never have too many weapons for them. And I think that Ford Wheaton's a guy who I'm surprised he hasn't gotten more love. Maybe he is from other media outlets for other teams with maybe a more pressing need at receiver, but I haven't seen too much nationally. And I had a great conversation with him at the Combine. So I think he'd be a good fit. And then defensively, I actually wrote an article about him earlier this week because I had the chance to speak with him at the Combine, and I enjoyed the conversation so much. I did a follow-up interview, and it's Jordan Howden, the safety from Minnesota, who has a ton of experience playing in the Big Ten, played nickel, played in the box, played the post safety role. He did a little bit of everything for them. And you were mentioning, how you can pick up on things in a conversation and just the demeanor. Brilliant guy, listening to him break down the game of football. He also has ties to the 49ers. His uncle, Saladin Martin, was a defensive back for the 49ers back in 1981. So he was there. He told me, he's like, yeah, my uncle growing up used to always show me his ring, tell me how tough things were, mentioned how that prepared him. His dad was a defensive back at Grambling. So he's been, getting coached up and getting the wisdom shared from two guys who played at a very high level who've been very close to him. He was all academic Big Ten 4 years in a row. I talked to him a little bit about, that. I'm like, hey, man, it's really hard being a D1 athlete. How are you, excelling in the classroom and on the field? And I loved his response. He pretty much was like, since I was a kid, I've grades, I couldn't play football. I love football more than anything. So the grades, it's a must. I got to have it. And he talked about how that helped prepare him for his time management. And when he's studying game film and breaking down the game plan week to week, how much more, that academic success had prepared him for that. And I just think after getting the chance to speak with him, watching him study his game a bit, he'd be perfect for them right now because you don't really know what the future is going to hold. I think it's pretty obvious it's going to be Gibson and Hufanga this season. But he's a guy where, hey, if he ends up being a slot corner for you, if he ends up being a depth piece where you're rolling three safeties on the field, I want a smart guy who's versatile in the building. And I think based on where he's projected to go, I've seen day 3 pretty much across the board for him. He'd be a great value in the 5th round. Maybe they could move up into the 6th to get a guy like him. But I don't know if you've had the chance to watch him. I was a very, very big fan of Jordan Howden after talking to him and watching him.
Yeah, I did a little video on him because, the Niners had worked him out. And then when I started watching it, I was like, wow, this guy, he's instinctive. He's an instinctive player who's played, he finds the ball and he's played all over. He's played corner. I think he started as a corner, right? He's played safety. He's super physical. I mean, you look at the build and you say, wow, this guy played corner. I mean, this guy's got an incredible build. To me, it's like the one thing that is guaranteed in this draft is that the 49ers are going to get themselves a couple of DBs they really like. The couple guys that stand out to me, one is Brandon Hill from Pittsburgh, who's kind of like a John Lynch. Now, to me, he's a late day 2 pick. He's 5'10", 193 pounds. He may even out-hit his body. Like Howden's a little higher rated player than Hill. But, man, I mean, this Hill is absolutely, just absolutely smokes people. I mean, really, really big hitter, the kind of guy that kind of separates you from the football. He's really impressive to me. And then the other one is, my buddy Tony Pauline, who does some scouting and does some media, has a great podcast. Tony is talking about how the Niners have shown a lot of interest in the Louisville kid, Keitrell Clark, who's a nickel corner. And Keitrell Clark is also kind of small. He's 5'10", 180 pounds. But, man, if you watch the film on Keitrell Clark, I mean, this guy's everywhere. He's flying all over the place. To me, he kind of reminds me a little bit of a little bit more twitched up K'Wan Williams. This guy's tough. He can play inside. They list him at like 5'10", 180. He's a kid from Richmond, Virginia, but I just love Keitrell Clark, and he's projected in the 4th round. They have those 3 picks at the end of the 3rd round. To me, they got to get at least one physical safety. Doesn't have to start because you got some other guys, but I think you need to have draft a starting caliber corner and a starting caliber nickel, and Keitrell Clark may be that nickel player. Okay, 2 last ones before we let you go. You went to the local pro day. Anybody stand out to you? I mean, Jake Haener was there. I saw his interview, and it's like he didn't want to talk about Brock Purdy at all. I mean, it was like he seemed like kind of pissed that they were even asking him about Brock Purdy. I've heard Haener is really cocky. I don't know. There's something about his personality just doesn't seem like a fit with the 49ers. But he was the MVP of the Senior Bowl. He's got moxie for days, man, and he's a little bit stronger arm than you think. He was there. He was kind of the headliner. I think Tanner McKee might have been there. Anybody stand out to you at the local pro day? Oh, you're still muted.
I really liked, I was watching the running backs pretty closely, to be honest, because Frank Gore was there. I thought it was pretty cool. Frank Gore was there with Bobby Turner and Anthony Lynn, getting a close look at the running backs who were there. So I was kind of hanging out by there, seeing just what the dynamic was, and, kind of interested to hear if I could pick up on anything that they were working on there. And I was watching Jordan Mims from Fresno State stood out to me a little bit. I thought he looked really good with his cutting ability. It was really short. It was, 40 minutes. Maybe they were on the field, 35 minutes. They were on the field. A good portion of that was them just kind of stretching and running as a group. I did think that it was really interesting. I'm not saying that, they have to go out and draft this guy, but if we're talking interesting, that tackle, I think it was from Wazoo, who was like 6'11". And it's always fascinating to me when you see a group of players on a football field and one guy is just massively bigger than the rest of them. So he definitely stood out. But I'll be honest, there wasn't much that stood out that I hadn't already seen from some of those guys. Outside Mims was the big one for me. And then for Haener, I don't know personally. I don't really follow Fresno State too closely. I haven't really gotten the chance to ask any of my buddies who do a bit more, but I was present for the media scrum at the combine, and it didn't seem like he was all that thrilled to be doing the interviews, which I can appreciate and understand. But I do agree there's a level of, hey, man, if you're going to be an NFL quarterback, you're going to have microphones in your face, and you kind of got to have to deal with it. And I appreciate the element that goes into this. I'd be pretty annoyed if I had to do it all the time too, but it's kind of what comes with the territory. And I just thought it was interesting you said that, because I immediately thought back to the combine where I was like, I kind of remember that same kind of vibe coming off, where it was like, hey, man, even if you have to fake it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like that's what the great ones do. I'm sure a lot of these guys who are really charismatic on the microphone hate doing interviews too. But I wonder if that's something that's showing itself in meetings too. And maybe some of these guys are just football guys. They don't want to really talk to media. They don't really want to interact with media and fans, but maybe they get in a meeting room and it's totally different when you get his film on and you have him on the whiteboard breaking down plays and stuff. But I agree with you. If that's how if that same demeanor was present when he was meeting with the 49ers, I don't see how that fits with the culture they built here personally.
He wasn't at the pro day, but the guy who's the local kid, and I always take extra time to watch the local prospects because I feel like I want to get a good handle on it. And I got buddies around the league who sometimes will ask me about them. And I always look at all the local guys, and the guy who you think you got a handle on it, and then you watch a film, and maybe it's late in the process. And anybody you're watching now for the first time late in the process, this is late in the process. But I saw a film the other day of the San Jose State defensive end, Fahoko, Viliami Fahoko.
Yeah.
And this guy was the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. And the Niners got to get that guy. I mean, they just got to get this guy. This guy's about 270. They like their bigger ends. But this guy plays with a level of violence. He played opposite Cade Hall, whose dad, Rhett Hall, played with the Niners. I wouldn't mind Cade Hall getting to the Niners as an undrafted guy. But maybe Fahoko could recruit Cade Hall, because Fahoko, maybe fifth round, maybe fourth round, maybe sixth round. But that guy's just Jordan. I mean, this guy's just nasty. I mean, I love the nastiness and the anger that he plays with, and he's just throwing guys down. And he made some of the more memorable plays that I saw when I watched his film. I mean, he's a cousin, I believe, of Vita Vea, and he's just a monster off the edge. And I don't know how much you watch Spartan football, but do you know anything about Fahoko?
I do, and I'll give you a Krueger show exclusive here. So I actually interviewed Fahoko this afternoon. I was on the phone with him for a bit. I'd met him a couple times. Yeah, I met him at his pro day. I talked to him again yesterday at the pro day, and I actually interviewed him. I have an article I'm literally working on that'll be published tomorrow. I'm guessing tomorrow morning sometime for Niners Nation. So I'll share a bit of that with you guys here on Larry's channel before it gets printed. So this is
an exclusive behind the scenes. This is how the sausage is made at Niners Nation.
So one thing
that's an unbelievable find for me to ask this question, because we did not. This is not. We need to tell everybody this is not planned, not rehearsed. This is all impromptu.
I'll be honest, I played it a little close to the vest when we're talking about prospects, just because I like to let that stuff get out first and then have, so I'm not scrambling. Sure. It's more orderly that way. But since you brought it up, I'm a big fan of his game. And another one of those things where when you get the chance to talk to a guy, especially I talked to him for a decent amount of time off the record a couple times as well. Just you get a great sense that this is the kind of guy that would fit into their culture really well. So one thing I love asking these prospects when I do these pre-draft interviews is, you can go and you can ask, hey, what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses? I don't like asking that because I feel like inherently when you ask somebody, what their weakness is, there's a tend to be, it's easy to naturally be defensive, even if you're an open book and you're somebody who's comfortable with whatever you need to work on. So I always like to ask these guys, like, hey, what's the area of your game that you're most confident in heading into the league? And what's the area of your game that you feel like you need to work on the most as you make that transition? So when I asked Fahoko about what the part of his game is that he feels most confident in, he said he'd say it was his physicality and his aggressiveness. He said, personally, I feel like my hunger is unmatched when it comes to the game of football. And if you spend 5 minutes watching this guy's tape, you'd know just how true that statement is. The motor is always going with this guy. He was the 2022 Mountain West Conference Defensive Player of the Year, had 19 and a half tackles for loss, 9 sacks, 66 pressures. He had at least 3 pressures in 11 of the 12 games they played. He had a couple games, I think it was Hawaii and Nevada, if I remember correctly, where he had 11 and 13. Just every other clip when you're going through the all 22 is him pressuring the opposing quarterback. And then what really stood out to me was I asked him about, what do you need to work on? Like, what would you say is the main thing that you need to focus on going forward? And he said, number one, getting into football shape so I can run around as much as they need me to as soon as we report for rookie minicamp. And that, that guy's in football shape, but he's meaning NFL football shape. He's aware and has the self-awareness that there's a different level of cardio you need to maintain, making that leap to that level. And then he said, number 2 is flexibility and finishing. He said, I feel like I left a lot of money on the field these past 3 years in terms of just missing sacks, tackles for loss. And I feel like flexibility had a lot to do with it in terms of bending those tight edges and finishing in certain situations. So I feel like flexibility will help me a whole lot with finishing, which will be my number 1 priority as I head into this transition. So when you hear a guy who had 19 and a half tackles for loss and was just wrecking opponents say, I missed opportunities, I could have had more. Like, that's the kind of stuff to me where if these are the kind of conversations he's having with scouts, particularly with the 49ers, they're going to fall in love with a guy like that, where they have that physicality and that hunger, but they also have the self-awareness to know that as good as I was, I could have been better. And to have that open-mindedness to say, hey, I found ways to get after the quarterback. I don't know if you saw, he has an incredible spin move that he goes to with his counter. I apologize, I don't have the quote pulled up yet from our interview, but he talked about how much time he spent working on that move and how every time he was getting work in with his fellow linemen, hey, man, let's work on the spin. Let's work on the spin. And it really ended up, paying huge dividends for him. So he's a guy who really excites me because I think the tape's there. I think the personality is great. And just like you mentioned, he falls into that physical category where the 49ers love to target. There's this great tool that this guy, Arjun Menon, I hope I pronounce his name properly. I know he works for PFF, released that breaks down every GM's preferred, like the average score for our athleticism tests for each position. And the 49ers prefer heavier DNs more than I believe it was every other single team in the league. They had a higher average weight for defensive ends that they've drafted under John Lynch than every other team in the NFL. So a guy like Fahoko that's a little bit bigger, that falls into exactly what they want to do. So I'm a big, big believer in his ability. And it would be incredible to watch him play. One other little tidbit too, his dad was a chef at the restaurant Dwight Clark used to own back in the day. So I kind of asked him about that. So he's like, man, the 49ers have always been, he's like, it's in my genes. My whole family's 49ers fans. And he grew up in East Palo Alto, played at St. Francis, played at San Jose State. He made it pretty clear how special it would be to continue to play in the Bay Area and play for the team he grew up rooting for.
How awesome would he be in Kosherik's, wide 9, and he's got that hair underneath the helmet, and it's just bouncing, and this guy's just violent. I mean, it's awesome to watch him. What round do you think? I mean, or did you ask him? Does he have an idea of where he may go?
As of now, it's not too clear. I would say I would take him with one of their 3rd-round picks, to be honest.
Really, that high?
Mock drafts might say that's too early. I would do it in a heartbeat. I think he's a guy who has the pedigree to be a long-term piece for an NFL team. He has the work ethic, and I think they could find a role for him. So I would take him at anywhere from 99 to 102, any of those 3 picks.
I was thinking maybe you take a couple guys there, the 3rd, maybe you trade back into the 4th, and maybe you get a little bit and get him there. But you're right. I mean, if you like him, you like him. Chardal says, I'm a San Jose State alum and love Fahoko. Mark Hope says, yes, a Krug exclusive from Jordan. Mark Hope saying, Jordan entering legend status. No, but Niner fans are totally appreciative of that kind of thing. That's awesome. That is awesome. I'm so glad I asked you. One last one. If you had to wager, because you've been to the combine and you've seen the list of who they've looked at, and there's many years where they draft guys that they didn't work out. There's other years that they draft guys that they did work out. To me, the time frame is so valuable and so short that most of the guys you work out and look at, you're not doing it misdirection. There's not a lot of misdirection in who you're looking at, I don't believe, because I mean, they will say, don't tell anybody we showed interest if they're trying to hide a player, but you're going to look at who you're interested in. So who they've looked at. If you had to wager everything you own on one player being a 49er coming out of the draft, whether that be as a draft pick or an undrafted free agent, I'll leave it wide open to you. Anybody that you think coming out of the draft, you're like, you know what, either based on what they said, based on what you think of the 49ers working them out, based on the need, based on whatever, who's the one guy you would, if you had to wager, you'd say, you know what, that guy's going to be a Niner at the end of the weekend?
I would say Davis Allen, the tight end from Clemson.
Really? Brad likes him too. You guys both in on Davis Allen. And they did work him out.
Mm-hmm. I think he fits everything they want out of a tight end. I think the measurables are there. I think that he's a guy that fits just what they're looking to add at the position. And I'll be honest, I'm leaning a little bit on gut instinct here because that's a great question. I was kind of thinking it over for a moment, but my first thought was Davis Allen, so I'm going to stick with that.
Wow.
Hopefully you don't come to collect if I end up being wrong, because you'll end up with a bunch of signed pictures on my wall and my laptop. There's not much stuff here, but I'd like to keep it. So hopefully they draft Davis Allen. We'll see.
I'm going with a guy who I'm not sure they're going to draft. He may not even get drafted, but I read that they worked out this tight end from Eastern Kentucky, Dak Allen, and he had 25 reps at his pro day of 225. Would have been number one among all tight ends in Indy. He's a converted quarterback. He's coming off an injury, may not be healthy for camp, but I think it was a leg injury of some kind. But very productive, very athletic, converted quarterback, really strong upper body. Compares his game to George Kittle, but probably a lot of young tight ends too, I would imagine. But there you go, Dakota Allen. Have you heard anything about Dakota Allen?
I have not.
Check him out.
I'll definitely check him out now. But I have not to this point.
Check him out. All right, Jordan, great stuff, man. Tell people if they're going to Niners Nation so we're going to see this Fahoko piece appear on Niners Nation here in the next week or so.
Yes, it should be either tomorrow or if it's not done by tonight, because I don't want to keep. Kyle's got to edit it at some point, and my hours might be different than his. So if it's not tomorrow morning, it will be Friday morning, but definitely over the next couple days. And I have a couple more lined up with some guys who've either met with the 49ers formally on the top 30. Or I've had some meetings with them pre-draft that I have lined up where I try to do my best to get a sense of who they are as people, because we can all watch tape and we can look at numbers, but I think having a chance to hear from each of these prospects individually and have that, I always love hearing, somebody else say what their strengths and their weaknesses are, or what areas they need to improve on, or where they're good, because we can all speculate, but I think it tells a lot about self-awareness, and it might give us some information we wouldn't otherwise have. So I'm going to try to do my best to do at least 3 or 4 more of those, and then just a ton of mock drafts. I'm going to start getting to a point where I might do a mock draft every single day. I did one. I love that you said that you think the Niners need a safety and a corner, because I did one on, I think it was Monday for Niners Nation, and I loved the readers at Niners Nation, but I think they weren't loving me too much that day because they made it very clear that they didn't think that the secondary was much of a need as I did, but I might start doing some more specific ones where, one's targeting the secondary, one's targeting a receiver maybe or something like that. And just kind of try to fill the space as much as possible as we get to the draft. I don't know about you, Larry, it's been pretty tough the last couple of years without the first round pick. So I'm hoping to have one in 2024. So these couple months leading to the draft, are a bit more exciting than they've been the last 2 years.
It's funny, people by this time of the draft process always say to me, "You tell me the guys you don't like, man. You like so many guys." But in reality, I probably like, maybe 60, 70, 80 guys, and the draft prospect list is probably, 1,200 or 1,300 or, it's a lot of guys in this draft that, of course, there'll only be 262 draft picks, but there'll be a ton of undrafted free agents. And a guy that I mentioned before, if I was going with a guy that, outside of Dak Allen, I think that kid who's working out with Ayuk from Clemson, Joseph Nada, I could definitely see him as an undrafted free agent coming to the 49ers, just because I think he's that kind of a talent, and NorCal guy makes a lot of sense. Big-bodied receivers, they seem to like that. Jordan, awesome stuff, man. We think your content is phenomenal. Probably won't talk to you until after the draft, but have a great week and a half or so, and love to get your thoughts when it's over on what the Niners did. And thanks for coming on the Krueger Show tonight. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. Anytime, Larry. Always great talking to you.
Jordan Elliot, the best, man. He is really, really good. Really good. Go to Niners Nation and read their stuff. Kyle Posey does a great job. Jordan Elliott does a great job. Really, really good content. And there you go. Got a little nugget there. Viliami Fahoko, San Jose State, the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year. Sounds like he would love to stay in the Bay Area and be a 49er. We got this one from Joey Nichols. Larry, Jordan, love the part of the show focused on the draft. Despise the part focused on the quarterback drama. Just keeping it 100. Well, we didn't make that up, by the way. I mean, it's not like we're creating stories out of thin air. Yahoo's NFL reporter Charles Robinson reported in January that the Niners' confidence level in Trey Lance, quote, is very low right now. And then recently said on a podcast that compensation in a trade for Trey Lance would likely be a second-round draft choice. He was on the UPod to Win the Game podcast, and he said the compensation for trading Trey Lance, he goes on to say, if you offered San Francisco a 2 for Lance right now, you'd get him. I truly believe that if you offered a second-round pick for Trey Lance, you'd probably get him right now. So that means that, Charles Robinson's a responsible NFL reporter. So that means in his mind, the 49ers would gladly take a second-round pick. Now the only part of the equation to examine is, do you believe there's an NFL team out there that would be willing to trade a second-round pick to the 49ers for Trey Lance? And I think the answer to that is undoubtedly yes. Why? Because look at the quarterbacks projected to go in the second round of the upcoming draft. The way it's shaking out, C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, maybe Hendon Hooker, probably going round 1. So who's in round 2? Jake Haener, rather have Trey Lance. Tanner McKee, rather have Trey Lance. Jaron Hall, BYU, rather have Trey Lance. Aiden O'Connell, Purdue, rather have Trey Lance. DTR, rather have Trey Lance. I would. I'm not sure if the Niners would. Max Duggan had a tremendous year this year. I think I'd rather have Trey Lance. Stetson Bennett, rather have Trey Lance. Clayton Tune, I don't know about Clayton Tune. I haven't seen enough of him. Not sure who I'd rather have there, but probably I'd rather have Trey Lance. And I think most of the NFL teams would evaluate it the same way. So now you're starting to see a little bit closer why I predicted that I think Trey Lance is going to get traded on draft day. It's pretty clear by what the Niners have said that he's there. He's available. Just come pay their price. We didn't know what their price is. Well, if you believe Charles Robinson at Yahoo, their price is a second-round pick. Then you got to ask yourself, in your evaluation, in my case, my evaluation of the quarterbacks, is Trey better than the quarterbacks that would go in round 2? And there's no doubt in my mind he is. So if I'm Houston, to me, it's not crazy at all that the Houston Texans would pick Anderson out of Alabama at the top of the draft, bypass the quarterbacks, and turn around and trade their high second-round pick to the 49ers for Trey Lance. Or maybe trade back from that spot. Or they also have 2 third-round picks. I think if I'm Houston, I'd probably say to the 49ers, You want my high 2? You got it. You want my 2 threes? You got it. You can't have both. What do you want? You want that high 2, or you want the 2 threes? And then it's just a matter of who are they eyeing and where do they think those guys are coming off the board. But once again, what I started this show talking about is if you go back, it's like, hey, you're anti-Trey Lance. No, I'm not anti-Trey Lance at all. What I'm saying is I think the 49ers may move him, but then I'm also saying that the players that they could potentially get back for him or that pick, if they wound up getting a high second-round pick, that player could be a significantly good player. That you get Michael Mayer, you get that Adetomawa Adebawore, you get Kalijah Cansey. I mean, we're talking about stars. You get Emmanuel Forbes, he's a shutdown corner. You get Isaiah Foskey, you may get a bookend defensive end opposite Nick Bosa, who's a De La Salle kid from Antioch, who's got all kinds of potential, really strong. Adebawore from Northwestern is really intriguing. Jahmyr Gibbs from Alabama, I think, is a superstar. Kalijah Cansey, I think, could be really, really special. So, and Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, I think, is going to be a Pro Bowl caliber tight end. So, I mean, it really is intriguing, and it's not. And then it comes back to the question that I brought up to Jordan: what do the 49ers want? Do the 49ers want a quarterback competition? I don't know that they do. Sounds to me like they want to anoint Brock Purdy as the starting quarterback. And it sounds like to me they've come to the realization that Trey Lance needs to play. And those two agendas don't jive. So will they move him? Based on the tea leaves, I would say yes. The only question is, will there be a team that offers a second-round pick? And I think we're looking at it in the Houston Texans. And the Adam Peters thing, if Adam Peters is gonna go there, the one thing we don't know how DeMeco Ryans feels about Trey Lance. We don't know how Adam Peters feels about Trey Lance. But they were here when they drafted him, and maybe they love him. And if they love him and they're willing to move the 32nd pick in the draft or 33rd pick in the draft, sounds like, according to Charles Robinson of Yahoo, that's a done deal. That the Niners would absolutely say yes. So there you go. Just throwing that out there. So why have I thrown that out? And it's funny, when I came out with this a couple weeks ago, people were like losing their mind. Oh my God. I mean, there was people taking shots at me yesterday. I saw, oh my God, this guy's out of his garage. And this, what are you going to say if it actually happens? Then what? Joey Nichols. I do love Adebawore. Jose says Michael Mayer is the pick. I mean, how do you pass on Michael Mayer? I mean, that's the thing. If you have Michael Mayer, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and a really good defense, and I mean, my God, you got a great shot to win the Super Bowl. If you said to me, though, John Lynch comes to you, Krueger, and says, what do you think? How are we going to make that next step? I'd say, John, I don't want to trade Trey Lance. But if I'm going to trade Trey Lance, you know what I want to get? A great football player. It doesn't matter what position. It doesn't matter if it's a D tackle or a corner. It doesn't matter if it's a defensive end or a tight end. Get a great football player. If you trade Trey Lance and you get Michael Mayer becomes a Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowler, tight end, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to mind. You trade Trey Lance and you get Kalijah Cansey and he becomes this monster on your front next to Hargrave and Armstead and Bosa, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to care that you move Trey Lance. If you get Emmanuel Forbes and he becomes a Deion Sanders-like monster shutdown number one corner, nobody's going to care. So I think that to me is how I look at it. We'll see. We'll see the way it comes down. We're getting close. Draft comes up on the 27th. It is the 13th. It is 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, the first round of the NFL Draft 2023. All right, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being a proud sponsor of the Krueger Show. If you haven't been there, it looks like this.
We grew up with a Sunday dinner. That means no matter how busy you were, no matter where the hell you were, you came to dinner on a Sunday night. Yeah, Sunday dinner without sausage, it's like a church without God. You know, how can you go to church if you don't believe in God? You know, and along with the sausage also became the discussions. That was discussion night. You know, it wasn't a typical family that you sit there and you're quiet, you know, and you don't talk with a mouthful. Oh no, man. Italians talk when they're eating. Italians even talk when they're sleeping. And definitely we talk with our hands. So if we can't express it through our mouth, through our lips, we express it with our hands. So, and that's what sausage is, really. It's an expression, you know, that life is good.
All right, come down the home stretch on a Thursday night on the Krug Show, and thanks to everybody in the chat. Always love rapping with Jordan. Jordan's fantastic, man. He is really, really good. You know, I would jump on his channel, but he doesn't have a channel. But that's why we always promote the hell out of Niners Nation. He does a great job. Let's hit a couple of the chats here at the end. I think some good ones. Joey Nichols says, if Trey Lance becomes a top 5 quarterback and they trade him, it will go down as the most disastrous trade in the history of the league. Flat out. Yeah, you know, it's weird. Though, if you ask me that question, do the 49ers prefer a quarterback competition this summer, or they prefer to make Brock their starter and move Trey? I think it's the latter. I know a lot of us, I believe that Trey Lance would beat out Sam Darnold, and I believe that Trey Lance might be the higher upside quarterback long term. But it's not about what I believe. It's about them. And they seem to have evaluated this in a way that Brock's their guy. And not only did they say it as much, they also said they're entertaining trade offers for their quarterbacks. We all know who that means. That's Trey. And then they kind of whispered to the Ian Rappaports of the world that they don't feel like they have a quarterback. They feel like they've got a real guy, in Brock Purdy. Then they brought in Darnold. I will say this. Has anybody actually done the exercise of watching Sam Darnold's 2022 Carolina Panthers film? There's some good stuff there. I mean, Sam Darnold, if you say to me Sam Darnold, I say he stinks. I watched his the highlights of his season. The highlights of his season were excellent. Really were. Now, it's a highlight reel. You always got to remember that. It's a highlight reel. So there's a lot of probably negative plays you're not seeing there. But I took out 1 or 2 games, and I watched a game and a half of Darnold at the end of last year. Definitely played his best football. I don't know that I would be with Kyle Shanahan saying he's got as good a skill set as there is. But even that comment right there makes me think Trey's going to be traded. Why are you talking up Sam Darnold? If they're the other thing, it's like there's a lot of people getting really bent on this, and it's like I'm just reading the tea leaves. I'm not rooting for it. I'm just predicting it. But look at all the evidence we have here. They're looking at DTR. They bring in Sam Darnold on the first day of free agency. They're talking about Brock Purdy like he's super special. They're touting Sam Darnold as special. They've never said anything about Trey being special. We're asked about Trey, and they said he's on our team right now. I mean, to me, it just seems like we know they're going to entertain trade offers, and now you got Houston. Houston's going to bypass on a quarterback at the top of the draft. If that happens, I think there's a very high likelihood Trey winds up in Houston. And in a lot of ways, Houston might be the best spot for him. Why? Because you got a first-year head coach that may believe in him, that's going to have a roster that's a developmental roster. There's no pressure. He needs to play. It's in the AFC. The 49ers can hand deliver him to – they can look Trey's family in the eye and say, hey, look, we care about Trey. We're going to put him in a very good situation with people that we know, people that he knows, an offense that he knows, with the ability to get snaps and play. I think they're going to sell this as you know what, they're doing right by themselves and they're doing right by Trey, and they're committing to Brock. And then I think I wouldn't be surprised if they drafted a DTR and then celebrate the fact that he's so experienced, and then can talk about how Brock was so experienced, and kind of paint experience as the key factor in their minds now when they evaluate quarterbacks. So that's what I'm predicting. That's what and now after watching this Texan thing come together, where now Adam Peters may be headed there, and there's talk that they may not take a quarterback at the top of the draft. It's starting to, a lot of the boxes are starting to get checked. A lot of the things that I thought we were going to see, we're starting to see. I thought it would be the Titans, but if it's the Texans, what can I say? I was close, but no cigar. On the channel, good day today on the channel, by the way. Good day overall. Spent 2 to 6 with Mark Willard. Did a nice hour with Damon Bruce. Got a nice hour and a half in with Jordan Elliot. Was on Grant Napier's channel this morning at 10:30. Tomorrow on the Krueger Show, bright and early at 10:30 in the morning, Matt Barrows is in the house. Man, and I love Matt Barrows. Seriously, if I could have voted for the best content creator, I would have voted for Matt Barrows. I absolutely would have. And I think what I put out there is damn good. And I would have voted for Matt Barrows. So when I have all the content creators on that I really like. Everybody on my channel I like. I would never bring anybody to the channel I don't like. So who's on my channel? Vish, Grant, Jesse, Hensley, Breezy, Barrows, Lombardi. Those are the guys that I like. And there's others that I'm leaving off. Jordan, Kyle Posey. Those are the guys that I think are really, really good. And so I'm always going to bring the best content creators to the channel. So tomorrow, Matt Barrows at 10:30, and we'll look ahead to the draft. We'll look back at the local pro day. I'll ask him about this, about the Texans, about Adam Peters, about Lance potentially going there. And, Matty is very balanced. He listens and learns and digests and is open-minded, and he doesn't have an agenda. He's not rooting for an outcome. He's just kind of covering the story. So 10:30 in the morning, check that out, me and Matt Barrows. 2 o'clock tomorrow, check me out with Willard on 95.7 The Game, and Tim Legler is going to stop by. And I was saying to Willard that Legler, in my mind, is the best NBA guy. If I got to talk about NBA basketball and the NBA playoffs, and I can have anybody to talk about it with, I like Legler. The other guy that I really like is John Barry. I love John Barry. I think John Barry's awesome. But Legler is really good. Tim Legler is a tremendous, tremendous analyst. And he's just really, really solid across the board. He knows his stuff. He's just really good. He's just really, really good. So anyway, tomorrow he'll be with us, and we get a couple other guests tomorrow on there, but I think that's one I'm really looking forward to. Tim Legler, Luke Luna, Larry, Titans and Texans, no Trey, and where he's at. That will tell us what everyone thinks about Trey. If they aren't trying to grab Trey, it will be a reflection of what the Niners are feeling. Okay, I see that reasoning. I'm not sure if it's all 100% sound, but I see where you're going. I absolutely do. Joey Nichols. If Trey Lance becomes, we already read that one. Senior softball game. I'm with Larry. Trading Trey totally makes sense. Look at GPK. If Larry was sponsored by McDonald's, he'd be saying they have the best hamburgers in the world. Oh, my goodness. GPK. MF. Farhan didn't seem confident. I'm with Tolbert and Copes tonight. My goodness. Got in the car. Poor Tommy T's voice. My goodness. I'm terrible. He's not traveling with the team. No chemistry. You know, I've heard that Farhan's in Los Angeles a lot of the time. Is that true? I don't know. I've heard that. I've heard that he's pulled a Terry Donahue and that he's actually operating the Giants a lot of the time from Los Angeles. I actually heard that 2 times this week. I haven't been able to corroborate it or verify it, but that might be a nice question for Farhan. Hey, Farhan, how do you feel about LA? No, not the Dodgers, just living down there while you're the general manager of the Giants. Trade talks or Troc talks. Larry, would you sponsor a cannabis genetics company? Would I sponsor them? Or could they sponsor me? What if I sponsor you see my ads at a cannabis genetics company? You go in there and you're picking up your weed and there's a picture of me and the Krueger show. Check it out. Get in there, get your green, and then get back home and watch the Krueger show. I think he means the other way around. I think he means, would I accept a sponsor on my channel of a cannabis genetics company? I wouldn't make any moral judgment on that, but I don't know what YouTube's rules are on that. Does anybody know? I would not make a judgment on that, but I absolutely would not take a chance without getting some approval from somebody. There's no way I would just take a chance on that. Luke Luna says Dalton Kincaid's coming out of Utah. That's where I'm located, and I wish we could have him next to Kittle in 2 tight end sets with Purdy. Sheesh. Yeah, Kincaid is special, man. I love the Utes. I watched the Utes a ton this year. I bet on the Utes a ton. I love that quarterback. I love that program. Clark Phillips, Whittingham, that Muhammad Diabate, the linebacker. Utah's good, man. Utah's good. The big offensive lineman that the Niners worked at, I forget his name, but from Utah. That's a good program. Utah is a damn good program. MF, quoting Farhan, we don't rebuild. Yeah, because rebuild means you actually have to have prospects. They're in the middle of a teardown. The Giants refuse to tear down their dilapidated kitchen with the Formica. Knock it out. Seriously, guys, come on. Throw some prospects. No more Yaz. Give me Matos. No more Wade. Give me Casey Schmidt and Villar on the corners. You could play Wade. Just play him in right. All I'm saying is go with the kids. You got Belt. You got Bart. You got Bailey coming behind the plate. There's your young catchers. You got Casey Schmidt. Put him at third. You don't have a young shortstop that's ready. That's fine. I like watching Crawford every day. We'll play with Crawford. Go with Tyro. Promote Will Wilson. Play VR at first base a lot. Go with Ramos. Go with Matos. Go with Harrison. Bring up Cole Waits. Go with some of your young guys. Have this be a developmental year. That would be my approach if I ran the Giants. What else? Who else is in here that we want to throw in there? MF. Farhan makes better fantasy football moves than his MLB moves. He spends more time on it. Clarsard 49. The trading trade topic is sensitive on both ends, but those who prefer Brock label Brock the next Messiah a little over the top. You know what? I don't even know what to say. It's just like people are so dug in on this. It's sad. It really is. It's like there are people that will not be happy. They call themselves 49er fans, but they're only going to be happy if Trey wins the job. Why is Brock not your starting quarterback? What has Brock Purdy done to make people mad? There's a lot of anti-Brock He's never lost except for this Eagle game where he got knocked out. The guy never lost. The players love him. The coaches love him. He's humble. He's accurate. They score 33 points a game. What don't you like? I'd like to know. I'd like to know why. I mean, you can't just be like, well, I don't think he's high end enough. Let's find out together. But to pronounce that he can't do it when he's not just, it's not like, people are saying he can do it and he's not doing it. He's doing it. And you're not happy. He's winning. Let's just remember this. It's really fucking hard to win in pro sports. When you're winning, don't question it. Appreciate it. There's nothing sadder than critiquing winning sports. It's hard to win. When you win, just be glad you're winning. Don't sit there and say, oh, I don't think we can do this. Maybe he won't be able to win a Super Bowl. Maybe he will. But, you're winning right now. You're winning. He won every game he started. You would have thought he was like 500 based on the way people have reacted to Brock Purdy and the potential that he might be the quarterback. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay that you can have a quarterback that isn't the biggest, strongest, fastest. It's okay. There are a lot of bigger quarterbacks than Purdy with better arms. It's not about that. It is not about that. Go watch my video on Brock Purdy and the 5 stats that kind of nobody ever cites, where he's number 1 in the NFL. Number 1. Oh, my goodness. GPK. Larry, you even made a video a few days ago stating you are a Purdy fan, then spent an hour talking him up. Come on, man. You don't want Trey in the picture taking the job from Purdy. Oh, my God. As GPK, you're wrong. And then also, if everybody wants to look things up, go look at my tweets before the draft. I was all pro Lance. I was the one who was saying they should get Lance. I'm the one today I'm more positive about Lance than the Niners. I haven't heard Shanahan or Lynch say positive things about Lance. I'm willing to say I believe the guy's going to be really, really good. I just am predicting they're going to move him. I'm predicting what they're going to do. We do understand that, right? When the weatherman comes on the weather tonight and says, hey, tomorrow, partly cloudy on the coast, warmer inland, he's not telling you he's rooting for that. He's telling you he's predicting that. There's a big difference. Bomber T trying to clean it up. He says, GPK all day. Larry wants the best player on the field. Seriously, I don't have any agenda. I love Trey Lance. I'm the guy who I scouted his dad in the Canadian League. I'm the one who said they should go for Trey Lance over all those other quarterbacks that were available to them. I was the one who was sky high saying other people were saying Mac Jones. I was saying Trey Lance. So now I say, you know what? They're going to trade Trey Lance. Now I'm the anti-Trey Lance. Come on. MF, Barrows shoots it straight. Yeah, Barrows is good, man. Yeah. GPK, Larry needs his credit vindicated because he was the so-called one who scouted Purdy. No, I wasn't the guy who scouted Purdy. I didn't even like it when they drafted him. I'm just told you in May that I thought he was good. That's all. Daniel Shabazz, Yoda best. Larry, I like the Yoda. Klarsard, Trey will not be traded and Brock will be traded. Trey won't be traded and Brock will be the best backup in the league. Both sides win. Who's E? I might need a resend on that one. Anyway, I'm a Niner fan. I want to see the Niners win. It doesn't matter to me if they win with Trey or if they win with Brock. I just want to see them win. And if you think I'm rooting for this because I predicted it, I don't care. I really don't care. I'm a big boy, man. I can take it. I can take the Niners draft day coming and going and them keeping Trey and a bunch of people saying, you're wrong. I'm okay. I'm going to be just fine either way. Luke Luna says, Larry, if Lance was Kyle's pick, he would flat out tell everyone Trey's QB1, especially with Brock being hurt. With the picks they gave up, Kyle's pride would make Lance QB1. I don't know. We got this one, PKTSDC. Grant Napier coming on your channel Sunday morning. Picking a time, but I think Sunday morning, maybe around 10. Grant's going to be on talking about the night before game 1 of Warriors Kings. So look for that. That's going to be good. And if you miss it, well, it'll be on YouTube. You can check it out. Joey says Legler is given short shrift on ESPN. It's too bad because he's their best analyst. Oh, easily. Mark Hope. Good night, Larry. You killed that S today. Thank you, Mark. And thanks for the super chats, my brother. Val Ramos. Krueger strain. Not sure what that means, but whatever. Dusty Gold said, can't do it, Larry. YouTube will give you a strike. Oh, for the cannabis. All right. Good to know. Artur says, Krug, you excited for the draft coming up soon? Which tight end do you think we realistically draft? Yeah, that's a good question. I'm all over Michael Mayer. And that's kind of one of the reasons I think the Trey trade makes sense is because Michael Mayer, dude, you add Michael Mayer to George Kittle, and man, you might be the best in the NFL. Michael Mayer is special. It was interesting. I respect the hell out of Jordan Elliot. He says Darnell Washington. Kincaid, as the texter said before, if you watch college football, man, big time. Musgrave's kind of a workout warrior. Laporta's nice, but I don't know if he's super special. The kid Kuntz out of Old Dominion is huge. He's 6'8". He's got some good workout numbers. I don't know, though. To me, it seems like he's going to take some hits on those legs. I kind of like Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State. I like him a lot. Jordan said Davis Allen from Clemson. They looked at Cameron Latu from Bama. I think Schoonmaker might not be bad. I'd probably say Tucker Kraft or Schoonmaker make the most sense. Maybe Elijah Higgins if you're looking for a flexed out tight end, and maybe that Dak Allen kid out of Eastern Kentucky if you're looking for that, day 3 deep sleeper. Joey Nichols says Braden Daniels. I think he's talking about the offensive lineman from Utah. MF says Farhan lives in L.A.? Question mark. That's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing he's operating out of L.A. He's not even up here. I don't know if that's the case. Let's see. We got this one from Trock Talks. It says, deal. I had it backwards for the YouTube policy. Bay Area's best. We got this one from Niner Dads. Hey, Larry. Glad I caught you live this time. Great stuff on 95.7 The Game today, lately. And, of course, this channel. Killing it. Appreciate you. Archer says, also, Krug, you think Tay Martin balls out this year. Can't wait to see him in action. Dude, Tay Martin's got ball skills. He's a hell of a receiver. Now, he doesn't have a great 40 time, but, man, the way if it winds up being Brock Purdy's accuracy and Tay Martin's ball skills and radius, really, really something. I mean, really something. Tay Martin, I think, is going to be a very dangerous red zone threat for the 49ers. Now, I don't know if he can separate. He's not a burner, but he is tall. He's 6'3". He's got long arms. I really believe in him. He was good at Wazoo. He transferred to Oak State. He was better at Oak State. I saw him at the end of his career at Oak State. He went for 100 yards like 3 weeks in a row. I saw him in the bowl game. I think it was the Fiesta against Notre Dame. He caught like 9 balls for 110 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was the best player on the field. They call him Big Play Tay. So look for him, man. Look for him. He's legit. He is absolutely legit. Dan Cochimilio, I know that name from somewhere. He said the Giants can't consistently hit, but at least they're slow. You're slow, but you're anemic. You don't pitch, but you can't hit. You're not much of a fielding team, but you're not much of an offensive team. Maybe that's the new slogan. We'll tell you what we can't do. Gold coming back, Larry? If not, do we need to draft another kicker? No draft picks on kickers. No. I do kind of like the kid Ryland, Chad Ryland out of Maryland, but I wouldn't draft him. Sign him afterwards. Sign him after the draft. That's what I would do. Sign him after the draft. No more draft picks on kickers and punters. Not when you can sign guys off the street who can do the same thing for you. Use your picks on football players. Offensive, defense, special teams, but not kickers, not punters. Luke Luna. Larry, Purdy isn't video game enough for some of the microwave fans. They would rather have Lamar and lose than win. How we have been playing, I guess. I don't get it. You're winning. It's hard to win. Do you guys remember that stat that before Purdy took over, non-Garoppolo quarterbacks under Kyle Shanahan were 9-29? 9-29? And suddenly it's like anybody can do it. Yeah, it's Brock right now, but Trey would be in there. He'd be winning just as much. It's all the key's McCaffrey. I mean, no, you're wrong. The key's not McCaffrey. Whatever. PK says, Larry, isn't Grant Napier coming on your channel and Jason Ross? Yeah, Jason Ross will be on Saturday at 9 a.m. Grant will be on Sunday morning, I think around 10. Looking forward to both those guys. Ross is class, man. Class act. Check him out on 1140 out of Sacramento. Mark Hope says it's really effing hard. Words of wisdom. Yeah, that's winning. Winning in the NFL, baby, it's hard. When you're winning in the NFL, do not look the gift horse in the mouth. Do not sit there and be like, yeah, we're winning, but we can win with anybody. No. You're missing the point. You don't understand how hard it is to win. MF says, I remember hearing Krueger on with Tolbert and Brooks applauding the Lance pick. Thank you. And it's there. I mean, I've never deleted a tweet hardly ever. I mean, if I've deleted 10 tweets in my life, and if I have deleted a tweet, it's all because of like a mispronunciation or a misspelling or something that didn't make sense or just some mistake. I don't take down tweets. So go look at it. I'm not sure how to search on Twitter, but go. You know when the draft was. I've been on Twitter the whole time. Go find it. Go. You want to throw receipts? Go get your receipts. Dusty Gold. Larry's reading the tea leaves correctly on Lance. It's amazing, too. So many people are crushing me. Absolutely crushing me. What's his source? He's in his garage. What does he know? He's an idiot. Today, Grant's doing a whole video on the possibility of Trey Lance being traded. I mean, people are losing their mind saying terrible things about me and my family and awful things. Terrible, awful things. Vish. What's up, Krug? Vish. What's up, Vish? Vish and I took this week off. I think I was getting to Vish. I think I was bugging Vish. It's not. No, we actually missed connection. I did radio all week this week, and Vish is Central time zone. And I wasn't getting home till 7:30, and that's 9:30. So we just we put the Vish home and home on the back burner for the week, but we'll be doing it next week. I think Vish might be my favorite guy to stream with of everybody. It might be Vish because we always have great streams. Artur says, seriously, dude, now I see why they call us the whiners. Ridiculous fan base. I mean, we love our team, but this I can only be happy with this quarterback or that quarterback. They all play for the Niners. Trock Talks. Larry, you were wrong at drafting Lance. I don't think so. I think he just hasn't played. I think Lance is going to be damn good. I really do. Because, here's the thing. And none of that crap about his elbow or his delivery. I got to laugh really loud at a lot of that stuff. His elbow was here, but now it's here. Oh, my God. I mean, it's night and day. His stride is here, but is his knee bent? But is the ball out? Shut the fuck up! Oh, my God, shut up. I mean, seriously, shut up with that stuff. We're talking about one throw in practice against air and you're scouting mechanics off a picture. Oh, my God. I mean, it means nothing. Nothing. Oh, my God. But that's what kind of appetite there is for Niners and for the latest, and I get it. I do get it. But, I mean, my God, some of the smartest people, some of the guys I respect the most, and they're going into this detail about did you see it? The ball came out and I mean, that video the other day, I looked at it and my son's like, Dad, make a video on that. And so I'm like, I looked at it, I'm like, okay, so we got one close up of him throwing a spiral to a guy who we can't see, who catches it with his hands. We got one kind of skinny post that he throws 3 feet behind the receiver that the guy reached back for. And then we got one where he doesn't even really follow through, and it's kind of like just a little dump off underneath in the flat. Didn't follow through, didn't really move his feet, just kind of threw it. And we're evaluating it, and people are talking about it. And I mean, seriously, that one was a rough video. That was a rough video. I'm looking there going, really? I mean, I stood on the sideline of every practice in minicamp and training camp, and there's only marginal amounts that you can get out of that. I've talked to Tim Ryan for hours about this. People who produce camp stats. It's like, dude, I used to make the scripts for the gold miners for practice and going through what plays and what sequences and talking to the coaches and finding out what play do you want in there. Yeah, I want this one in there. Go at that. I want to make sure we go at this guy 3 times at the beginning. Why, coach? Why do you want that in there? You know what? I looked at him there. He's a receiver. He didn't have his gloves on, or he didn't have his gloves tightened up, or he's not even ready to play at the beginning of practice. Let's go right at him. There's all kinds of reasons that plays get put in there, and that it's like there's just a million things that go into what plays and this and that and yet people put so much importance in it, and it's like, whoa, if you really knew. Some plays are there because the coaches want to see it. Sometimes it's there because the coach wants to challenge a player. Sometimes they're taking advantage of a matchup. Sometimes they just want to self-scout, and they know what they're doing a lot, and they want to do the opposite of what they're doing out of the same formation. Sometimes, there's just an endless number of factors that go into these plays, and people start breaking it down like it's just very definitive. And it's like, hey, do you realize there's like 19 factors that could go into any one singular play that you're not taking into account? And whatever. Vish says, Larry's hating on Lance again. Come on, Larry, stop being lazy. You're lazy, Larry. Yeah, I'm hating on him. Vish. All right. What do we got here from Armando Castellanos? He says, what's it going to take for the Warriors to go back-to-back, Larry? Health. That's it. If the Warriors stay healthy, they got a great chance to go back-to-back. But they kind of sleptwalk through the season, didn't really expend a lot of energy. Now they're trying to step on the gas pedal and make it all happen. I don't know if they can do it without getting hurt, but if they can avoid injuries, that's really the key. That's the key. Artur saying Vish stoking the fire. He is. We got this one from PK saying Vish rocks, and then we got Vish later down here in the chat saying, "What's up, PK?" There you go. Vish, PK going back to Vish. Vish, not much. You guys got to get together. PK saying Vish, chilling, cool channel. GPK all day. It's coming, Larry. You're gonna get shredded, and all these Purdy cronies in the chat are going to be hiding. GPK, he was undefeated going into the Philly game. What makes you so mad at him? Why don't you like him? Trock talks. Hey, Larry, King's going to win. No. The beam ain't happening. I'll call my brother up in Thomas and be like, fuck the beam. You know what I'm going to say? You know what? It's been a great year. It's been a great year for the Kings. Warriors in 5. Vish says probably Tuesday with Krug. That's right. Vish and I on Tuesday, leading into more Niner talk. Vish says Kincaid is my tight end 1, Larry. Really? Over Mayer? Okay. I hear you. Kincaid is polished. I will say that. He is polished. There's a lot to like about Kincaid. We got this one from MF. You and Dan going live after the Tigers game tomorrow. Will the Giants piggyback again and blow the game from Mania? So tomorrow, that game's at what time? 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock? We might go live tomorrow night because I've got Barrows in the morning, and then I'm doing the thing with Willard 2 to 6. Giants game. I'll probably get home. Maybe 7:30 tomorrow night. MF go live after the Giants game. I'll be on the radio for some of that game. Batman 29. Larry, why don't you do 95.7 the game full time? Had an opportunity to, but wanted to make sure I stayed right here on my channel. And that's the honest to God truth. So that's why I'm filling in. I'm filling in because I had an opportunity to go full time, and it didn't work out. Couldn't get together on the compensation package. Let's just say it that way. Couldn't get together on the compensation package, but I love them, and they I think love me. Matt Nahagian is awesome, and the other hosts at the station are tremendous. And I'm going to be filling in with them, and I hopefully maybe do a Niner pregame with them. I don't know. We'll see. I did pregame last year with Lo Neal, so I'll still be I'm open to going there full time, but it's just got to be the right deal. It's got to be the right deal, and if it is the right deal, I'll be there full time because I do love it, and you know how much I love the radio. Bomber T says Larry hits with the hard facts. Bomber, appreciate you, brother. Keena Turner and Hooch, which is one of my favorite handles. Larry, try to work in another Carol Dota reference for us old San Francisco natives. I was hoping somebody would have caught that. I'm glad you did. PK said, Marty Lurie tomorrow, early morning postgame. Will Marty be on for postgame tomorrow? Wait, what time's the game tomorrow? Let's check that out. What time is the Giants game tomorrow? It's 4 o'clock, right? Something like that? 3:30? When they go east, it's always like, it's kind of screws with the times. You know me, I like doing postgame, but I don't like doing postgame at 5 o'clock. I like doing postgame at, 10 o'clock at night. I'm more of a night guy. All right, let's check it out. Friday. A's lost again, by the way, 8-7, or losing. Giants, Tigers, Mania against Wentz, and it's 3:40 in the afternoon. So, yeah, so I probably... I would say I'd definitely do a Giants post game tomorrow with Danny. I would say Danny will start it on his channel. Maybe between, my guess is Danny will be on around 6:30 on his channel, and maybe an hour later, maybe he can move everybody over to my channel because I'm going to go tomorrow night after the Giants Tigers, unless I'm just really beat. Some days after doing the radio, I'm just like, wow, I'm exhausted. It's hard to do both. That's for sure. It's hard to do a lot of radio and then a lot of the YouTube channel. And you guys know me. I like to be on a lot. I like to do a lot on the YouTube channel. Mark Hope says, you're a better man than me, Larry. I downloaded the Jumbo Security app to automatically delete all my past tweets. We get this one from Joey Nichols. Joey, I'll have to say I'm impressed. Joey, you know your guys. He says, Larry, have you watched Charlie Jones's tape? One of the best and most underrated receivers in this draft. You talking about the Purdue kid? I think you're talking about the Purdue wide receiver. Yeah, I have watched him. He's got great ball skills. I don't know if he'll separate from NFL corners, but he's got great ball skills. Day 3 guy for sure. But, man, kind of reminds me a little bit of Hunter Renfrow, but maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit more athletic. Batman 29. Vish and Krug show is currently top 5 of all 49er YouTube collabs. Top 5? Fuck. That's it? Me and Vish are top 5? We don't get any higher than top 5? I'd like to know who's better. What's a better collab than Vish and Krug? I want to know. That should be the next one. That should be the next little contest they have. Who's the best collaboration? Who's the best duo? I think me and Vish put out some pretty good shows. I'll say that. Especially we're really going to blow this thing out during the draft because I'm going to make sure that I just get every single guy booked for different times, and we're just going to just fire away. It's going to be like an explosion of content. If you love Niners and draft and chatting and just all kinds of analysis, I mean, we are going to go at it Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I promise you, I'll give my family the stiff arm. Just get out of here. Go back in the house. I'm talking to Vish. MF, why did Brian Sabian and Bruce Bochy get pushed out of the organization? Seems very odd. Isn't that that's the part about the whole Giant thing that's so aggravating? And I think it's one of the things that really kind of bugs me the more this regime goes on. It got billed like those guys retired on their own will, and now here they are, Boch is in Texas and Brian's in New York, and it's pretty clear they got pushed out the door. And that makes me not like Farhan and Gabe or the Giants ownership. What a bunch of unappreciative fucks. They won 3 titles in 5 fucking years. These guys are Hall of Famers. Sabian's a Hall of Fame executive. Bochy's a Hall of Fame manager. You push those guys out for Tandy 5000 and his buddy? You got to be kidding me. I mean, that's outrageous. Outrageous. Do I have a strong enough opinion on that? Mark Hope says, go Niners, go Sunset and Richmond districts in the city. Look at that. I don't know about Richmond, but Sunset. I'm a Sunset guy. Outer Sunset, inner Sunset. People say, is there a difference? There's no difference. Come on. It's all the Sunset. Bomber T. Poor Lance is probably losing his mind. I know. I wonder. I'm sure they've talked to him about it. What was he doing in What was he doing in Texas? Why is he at TCU? It's another weird one. Mark Gray says, we're talking about practice. Luke Luna, Lance has got the character that will keep him from being a bust. I agree. Luke, you pegged that. He says, I think he'll be good if he actually gets to play. Just may not be with us. He has to grab it now or he'll be traded by next year. A trade might be in his best interest. If the Niners don't believe or if they just are committed to going with Brock. I mean, you got to remember this too. Shanahan and Lynch don't have time to mess around and figure it out who's good and who's not. They needed the player to hit the ground running. I think the only real reason that they're going with Brock is just because he's doing it right now. He doesn't need to be developed. He's developed. He's played a lot. They don't need to develop him. Could they develop Trey? Yeah, they could. But he needs to develop. And to date, it hasn't happened. And I just don't think they want to invest any time in it because I think they don't feel like they got a lot of time. I think they got to win, and they got to win now. And who knows? I don't know what they're up against. For all we know, Jed walked into their office and said, if you guys don't win the Super Bowl next year, you're both out on your keister. We don't know. We have no idea. We have no idea what they're up against. But what's clear is that they're entertaining trades for Trey and that they're going with Brock. And yet there's all these people that are just so stubborn about it. It's like, I'm not seeing that. Okay. All right. Okay. We'll see. We'll see where it goes. I don't want to pound the table for it, but come on. Read the tea leaves. Read the room. That's what's going on here. That's what it sounds like. If they misdirect and go in a different direction, then they do. But if you ask me what it sounds like, I'm just going to tell you what I think it sounds like. Don't you want to hear my honest opinion, or you want me to just tell you what you want to hear? I mean, sometimes I get the feeling people just want to hear what they want to hear. Bomber T, poor guy is balding as we speak. Who you talking about? Oh, Trey. Oh, come on. Going at Trey? Don't go at Trey. Joey Nichols says, Larry, have you watched Raheem Jarrett's tape yet? Former 5-star has become super underrated. Maryland's offense struggled this past year, so he didn't have the season many of us thought he would. I haven't studied Jarrett. I've seen highlights. I like Jenkins. Is it Jacorian Jenkins, the Maryland corner, and Deontay Banks? I like both those guys. I'll study Jarrett, though. I'm going to go watch him right now. Dusty Gold. Grant rants about Trey's front leg straightens when he throws using all upper body. Watch that leg. I mean, that's fine, but I mean, come on. We're talking about pictures, practice. Playing quarterback is a lot more than just your motion or your balance. There's a lot of processing. There's a lot of decision making. There's a lot that goes into how you throw, how you run, how you process. There's just so many factors. We can't point to like, wait, the motion, Super Bowl, growth. No, it could be any. It might be growth, but it might not. We're talking about one throw. Believe me, I watch every single practice. I'm standing there. I'm watching it. You can see anything in a minute. That doesn't mean that tells the story. Any one rep can be good. Any one rep can be bad. You got to look at the picture. You got to look at the total picture. There's just so much more to it than just, you know what? Look at his knee. Look where his arm's at. Look at the ball coming out. Bingo. We've centered on the issue. I mean, it's not that simple. Joey Nichols, but the talent jumps off the tape. PK said, did you get Tim Ryan on your show? Not yet. I will, though. I will. Tim and I are boys. Tim and I go way back. Trock Talks, tell me I'm right. You wanted to draft Lance. I did. I wanted to draft Lance. And guess what? I still believe in Lance. I would like all these Niner content creators to be on the record. Do you like Lance? You have to believe either that he's a bust or that he's going to be good. What do you believe? I believe he's going to be good. I really do. I don't know if he's going to be good this year, but I think he'll be good before he's done. I really do. But I get the feeling if he's bad, there's going to be a bunch of people, nobody really believed in him. And then if he's good, just be like, they never should have dumped him. Don't do that. And yet people will do that unless somebody forces them to be on the record. Be on the record. Do you believe in Trey? Yes or no? It's time to be accounted for. And there's no wrong answer. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, eventually there'll be a wrong answer. But right now, I just want to know. Where are you? Are you more in the camp that you believe in him, or are you more in the camp that you don't? And just let's be on the record here, so there's no confusion on the back end when the guy can play, and a bunch of people said he was crap, and then I know what's going to happen. The guy's going to show that he can play, and then a bunch of people are going to say, "You said he would suck." No, I didn't. I said he was going to be traded. Steve M says, when I see Trey running with the ball, he looks like a big lumbering defensive end that just picked up a fumble. He needs to be a pocket passer. I agree he's not a runner. He's not Lamar. He's not Vic. He's an athletic, 6'4", 225-pound kid who can scramble, but the idea that you're just going to run him, no. It was a terrible game plan. Hated that game plan. You're going to have him pick and slide like he's Marcus Allen in a short yardage run play with no lead blocker? How long is that going to last before he takes more hits to his legs? Mark Hope says, Trock, Larry, and I were all in on Lance. It's up to him to make plays in the NFL. Daniel says, Larry doesn't hate. He congratulates. Yeah, no, seriously. The only thing I'm bummed that I haven't gotten an interview with Trey so I could sit there and tell him how I scouted his pops. I was with the Gold Miners. His dad was with Saskatchewan. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can remember those days in Regina. I've been to Regina, all right? Have you guys been to Regina? Now I'm just fucking around. No, I have been to Regina. Mark Hope says, Larry, I guess 8-0 doesn't mean much. I know, seriously. You're winning games. Batman 29. Larry, would you rather do radio or YouTube? I think YouTube is where it's at. I really do. But I like radio. And I've been doing radio since 1995. And I've loved the medium of radio. And in a lot of ways, what we're doing here is kind of bringing radio to YouTube. it's a radio format. Why do you think I go on for hours and hours and hours? Because I'm used to that. I used to do 4-hour shows. So I do 4-hour shows. Everybody else does like an hour and be like, I'm out of here. I'm like, no, man, we're just getting warmed up. Mark Hope says, fuck yeah, Larry. 95.7 can't afford you. Apparently not. Not right now. But you know what? I love them over there. I definitely think they got a great thing going. They do. I think Matt Nahagian is as good a radio guy as I've met. Love the hosts, Guru, Steiny, Willard. A lot of good people over there. A lot of talented people. Tremendous producers, great culture. It's cool. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Lo Neal, I've worked with Lo Neal. He's great. Love Lo Neal. I got to get Lo Neal back on here. That's another guy I'll get for draft weekend is Lo Neal. You guys will love Lo Neal. Mark Gray says, Larry is the man for us Kruegerans. There you go. Kruegerans, the name of my fantasy team. It's a South African coin. So my slogan is always, the Kruegerans, we're money. I haven't won in fantasy in a couple of years, though. It's time for me to get serious about fantasy again. It's been 2-3 years since I won in fantasy. We got this one from Niner Dad. He says, that would be dope, Larry. Not sure what that's in response to. I'm going too slow through the chat. Luke Lunas is great guy. Great guy, great stadium for us to wax LA teams. Dusty Gold, New York Sausage, giving Larry big money to stay away from 95.7. There you go. There you go. We got the sponsors. And thanks to our sponsors. New York Style Sausage, Telmetrics. And by the way, I never really pitch for sponsors, but if anybody does want to be, we have 2, maybe 3. There's some people that we're considering. We've got a couple openings for sponsors, and if you'd like to sponsor, just DM me, and if it works out, or if it works out, it works out. If not, no sweat. But we have 2 sponsor spots available if you'd like to sponsor, but we have limits for sure. And I'll give you all the details if you want to contact me. El Camilo Dorado says, Larry, after having Steve Young on your show, the bar is high on who's next. That episode was epic before the NFC Championship game. Isn't Steve the man? I mean, Steve is awesome. Steve's awesome. And I covered Steve when Steve was still playing, and just getting to know him through doing the show with Tommy and Rod. And I just love Steve Young, man. I love his independence. I love his intellect. I love his perspective on the game. I love how he's not swayed by other people. He knows the game so well that he never gets swayed by anybody else. I mean, he listens to other people. And that's also what I love. It's like if it doesn't matter if you're a former player or if you're just like me, a guy who scouted for a little bit and now has a radio show. If you have a point and it's compelling and it's correct, Steve will validate your point and tell you that it's correct. If you're wrong and he thinks you're crazy, he will tell you, dude, you're a nice guy, but you're wrong and you're crazy. So that's what I love about Steve. He doesn't just kind of read the room and be like, well, should I agree with this person? They're kind of a big deal. No, if he agrees, he agrees. If he disagrees, he disagrees. And that's what I love about him. And also, I wanted to get Steve on when there was like some stakes, you know what I mean? Something on the line. But yeah, no, I love Steve Young, man. We'll get Steve Young back. I just don't like to bother Steve with, I'm not the kind of guy that goes and asks for a bunch of favors from his friends or tries to get a bunch of donations or anything like that. It's like, I only want people to come on who want to come on. I only want guests to come on who want to come on. I only want sponsors who want to sponsor. I don't want to like have to convince anybody. I want people to be like, yeah, dude, I want to be there. And that's what I love about Steve. Cause when he said, yeah, I'll do it for you, let me know. And we made it happen right before the Eagles game, and it was great stuff, man. It was. And we will get him back on for sure. Artur says, Larry thinks he's tired after doing radio. It's just like Coach said, you're lazy, Larry. Lazy. You're fucking lazy. Urbanic, man. I miss that guy. I thought I was hustling. I was working 7 to 7. He's like, you're fucking lazy. I'll pick you up at 4:45. I'll drop you off at 1:10 in the morning, and I'll pick you up the next day at 4:45. Oh, man, those were the days. And seriously, I'd be walking into a house that had like a lot of my college buddies are still partying, and they were still like in college. I'm I'm walking in at 1:00 in the morning. They're walking out to bars. Oh man, good old days. Dan Coach Emilio, I'll go live at 6:30 and then move everyone over to Larry's channel tomorrow night, NorCal Sports Network. So yeah, maybe make sure Friday everybody starts with Danny on the NorCal Sports Network after Giants Tigers game 1 of the road trip, and then come on over around 7:30 or so when I get home from the city, and we'll do a little post game on there. Clarsard 49, Krug Jesse is must see TV. I know I didn't do Jesse this week either because I'm doing the radio, and he does the night shift, so he likes doing the night streams. So we'll get it all going again next week when I don't have such a busy schedule. But Jesse's the man. Jesse's the man. He's got a great show. I think he's got a really good, solid, researched opinion on the Niners. He doesn't just say a bunch of crap. Yeah, I like him. I really like him. And I only kind of met him through Grant. And I just am very impressed by Jesse's channel, his audience, but more than anything, just really his perspectives on these games or on these topics. Riddy Musich says, damn right you are, Larry. Must see TV. There we go. Krug Jesse, must see TV. And then there we got this one, Riddy Musich. Damn right you are. Okay. We got this one from Dusty Gold. Caught Bochy in spring training against the Angels. Sure missed Boch here in San Francisco. Yeah, I do too. We got this one from Luke Luna. I like Larry and Vish. They disagree in a very fluid way. That's a great point. I disagree. Great point, Vish. You're wrong. I think you're wrong, Vish. Artur says, dude, stop sending Larry on Giants and Warriors tandems. Jesus, dude. This is a Niners channel, MF. Now we got people debating. Do not ask Giants tangents. Come on. The one thing, I'll say, I love it. I love when we're talking Niners and there's a Giant person. I love when we're talking Warriors and there's a Niner person. I do. I really do. I've always enjoyed that, so don't ever stop. You hear me talking about a topic and you want to talk about something else, do it. Absolutely do it. Trock Talk says, this is my favorite, Larry. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. We got this one from PK. He says, Larry, can you bring Gary Radnich on? I don't know if Gary would want to do this, but I can ask. I can definitely ask. Danny says, best 3-man crew on YouTube, Larry, Dan, and Rye. Danny, you don't think that's maybe a little self-serving? That's awesome. Where is Rye? Can we produce Rye? You know what, Danny? Here's the deal. Saturday night, Warriors-Kings playoff game. Produce Rye. Produce Rye. We got to introduce Rye back into the mix at some point. Why not after the first playoff game? Let's have a monster Saturday night live stream with Cy and Baller. Hopefully Cy will be on his best behavior. Red, Danny, and Rye. We'll just all break it down. I'm hoping for Saturday night. Maybe we'll get Rye back. PKT SDC. I feel like it's an eye chart every time I see that. It says Dan, Marty, Dan, Larry, Rye. It's 2 Dans. He sure. We got this one from Steve. He says Dan has his own channel. That's right. We kicked him off of this channel, so he started his own. No, he's on NorCal Sports Network. Max Thunder, I agree 100% with you, Larry, on how the Giants treated Bochy and Sabian. It made 0 sense, and it makes it hard to stay invested in the team. They give you 3 titles in 5 years, and you chase them to the curb for 2 guys who have never won anything? Now, nothing lasts forever, and that's fine. But, I don't know, be straight with us. If you say you prefer Farhan and Gabe, own it. Nothing worse than kind of like they're off in retirement. Yo, they're great guys. Oh, yeah, we love them, and they're going to be here forever, and they're going to be up in new roles. Yeah, we got new roles. It's a bunch of bullshit. A couple of years later, they're out of town, chased out by the current regime. Look what they did. Look what they did for your team. Look what they delivered for your team. And you're chasing them out for guys you never won? I mean, come on. It looks so bad. 187. Drop facts, Larry. Mark Hope says, oh, geez, don't get me started, MF, regarding Boch and Sabes. Joey Nichols says, Jacory and Bennett. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The kid from Maryland. Really, really good. Really good. Joey Nichols, again, I appreciate Larry being a good sport about people disagreeing with him, not afraid of debate, and takes criticism in stride. You know what? We all, you're going to agree, you're going to disagree. It's sports. Dusty Gold said Lance was Larry's man crush. I was all in on Lance, and I still believe. And yet, you know what is going to happen if he doesn't get traded during the draft? There's going to be all these people like, see, yeah. It's all right. I brought it on myself. Brought it on myself, getting all those hundreds of thousands of views on those videos. That will teach you. Dusty Gold says, Larry, call Trey's pop to get that interview with him. I know, I should. Say, hey, Carlton, look, I know I was the guy in Regina watching you guys. Can we get Trey on the show? And that's the thing. That's why I really fell in love with Trey as a prospect, and I knew he needed refinement. I personally don't think he's that far away from being good. I just don't know if it's going to happen this year. But it doesn't mean I think it's going to take forever. I just think it's going to take a little bit of time. And you're going to have to invest in the time. I mean, you can't just snap your fingers and make him good. He needs to play. The guy's got 1 year of playing since high school. Joey Nichols, 187. You say Larry is the GOAT, but Larry thinks your trade take is trash, bro. Yeah, that's all right. We don't all see eye to eye on everything. Joe Schmo, it gets hairy in Regina. Stop it. That's bad. Joey Nichols, Larry believes in Trey. He knows your take is of the casual, low football IQ variety. Oh, man. GPK, I've been on the Lance train since we traded up to number 5. I always stick to my guns and been watching football a long time. I trust my eyes. All right. Respect. Absolute respect. Haruku Hatoki. Hello, Haruku. Good evening. Krug, Jordan Love or Sam Darnold? Who's the better quarterback? Do I got to is there a third door? Do I get another option? First of all, Jordan Love has done nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's impossible for me to say. He looks pretty athletic, but I'll say Sam Darnold there. I will. I mean, go look at Sam Darnold. Type into YouTube when this show's over, Sam Darnold 2022. Go look at Sam Darnold, what he did with Carolina in the final 6 games. A lot of good stuff there. There's a lot of good stuff there. Now, I don't know that I would say he's the best, greatest skill set I've ever seen, but there's a lot of good stuff there. I mean, he really did. 187 says, I don't take Larry's take personal. Yeah, come on. Don't take it personal. Danny says, I'll be ready for fantasy draft this year. Yeah, right. Nothing was better. Of all the shows we did this year, that might have been the most fun. As we're counting down to the fantasy draft, and Dan isn't dialed up and he isn't set up, and there's a ton of stress. We got 5 minutes until the draft. Get Danny logged on. What's your code? I don't know. Did you hit the right button? Daniel Shabazz. Larry, what are your top 2 favorite donuts again? Top 2 favorite donuts. First of all, I mentioned I like donut holes, but I like, how do you not go with like a jelly donut with like raspberry filling? That's a great donut. And then I'll say the thing that's circular, the cinnamon roll, a cinnamon roll with like a real soft cinnamon roll with, whatever, the circular ones. You can kind of peel it. Those are awesome. I mean, that right there. Glass of milk, maybe. Ooh. Ooh. Gilbert, Larry, do you think you would have a better football or baseball conversation with Farhan? I like Farhan as far as talking to him. I just got to see results. You know, I mean, they haven't even been able to tear down the roster yet, let alone build it up. I got to see results. Joe Schmo says, get Rod Brooks on. Suggestion there from Joe. Mark Hope says, Larry, you are the king of drive time, prime time. Love this week's shows. Mark, good to see that you're listening on 95.7 The Game. Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, Willard is very easy to work with. Very easy to work with. He knows his stuff. We don't agree on a lot of stuff. I think he takes some softer stances on some of the local teams, and I think he gives them too much credit, too much. To me, I feel like I'm a little bit more critical. I think I'm more cynical. I think he's more optimistic. Maybe that's a good mix, but that's how I feel. He's definitely more of an optimist. I'm more of like, what the fuck is going on here? You know, I'm like in that category, the WTF, where he's kind of like, hey, let's give it some time. PK says Steve Young will be too busy to be on your channel for draft week. Oh, he's asking the question. Steve Young will be too busy to be on your channel for draft week? I don't, the one thing about Steve is I don't know that he would be the guy that I would ask about, like, hey, what do you think of these two quarterbacks? I'd rather get Steve on after, when I know who they drafted, and say, hey, they drafted Jake Kaner. What do you think? Hey, they drafted Tanner McKee. Hey, they drafted DTR. Hey, what is it? They traded Trey, or they're going with this guy, or, after it's been decided, I think I'd like to get Steve on and get his thoughts. Steve is an awesome guy to talk football with, though. We'll do it again. We'll absolutely do it again. And I just don't want to over ask. I don't want to be the guy who's asking all the time. I want to make sure that we get him at a really cool time. But definitely we'll get Steve this summer. How about that? We'll definitely do it this summer. We got this one from PK. Says, great sponsor for Steve Young's sponsor. What are you talking about there? Let's see, PK. Did he throw another one? I don't see what he's suggesting there, but maybe he's saying get a sponsor. Maybe he's get a sponsor for Steve Young. That would be great. Now, Steve has made a lot of money. Steve is not necessarily about cut me a check. He likes to highlight some of the incredible things that he's done in the community. And I would love to have him on and highlight that kind of stuff, because that's what makes our community our community. That's what makes Steve Young beloved in Northern California, is that he actually takes the time to shout out these incredible companies that do these charitable things that make our world better for a lot of people that need help. And so, yeah, if I could do something with Steve this year on the regular and get a sponsor or get his, get mentions for his causes, man, I would gladly do it, because one, the causes are totally awesome. Two, it helps our community. And Steve, Steve, the fact that Steve sheds light on these issues and actually helps out, and we need more people helping out. There's no doubt about that. Couple last ones. Dusty Gold. Steve was all in on Zach Wilson. Who would you pick now, Wilson or Lance? I would go with Lance. I mean, Wilson lost the room. Every guy in the room was wearing the a picture of the backup quarterback. And so, yeah, I would go with Lance. Lance is beloved in the room. The guys love Lance. I think Wilson might be persona non grata. Now, I do think that Wilson's a good quarterback. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who have already decided that he's not a good quarterback. So, if you ask me, do you want Wilson? Yeah, I do. But I'm not acknowledged. I'm not going to. I'd rather have Trey Lance, for sure. Daniel says, Larry, if the Giants go 500 again this year, do you think Farhan would be back, or would it have to be worse? I think they'd have to lose almost 100 games. I think the Giant ownership group has already kind of stated that he's back. They exercised his option, I think, for 24. He's back. Joseph 559. Jesse is atop the 49er content creators. There you go. Vote for Jesse. PK says, Larry, you reach out to other Niner channels you don't know? Yeah, I do. If I see people I like that I think are really good. And then I do a bunch of little ones too for like people who are like, people who reach out to me and want me to come on their channel. I try to do as many of those as I possibly can. Just because it is kind of it's a community. And, there's people that have quit their channels, and I know there's some people that feel like guys like me jumping into the space have made the spot hot and crowded and this and that. So I understand not everybody loves the fact that I'm in this space. And I feel bad for the people who were in this space before and now are not getting the same traction and so on and so forth. So I am sensitive to that because that sucks, right? You feel like you had some momentum going, and now there's all these new people doing this, and maybe they have a bigger following, and it's like, oh, now nobody's watching me. But if you're in that situation, you got to ask yourself, why are you actually doing this? Are you doing this because you enjoy it, or are you doing it for money? If you're doing it for money, then I hear you. If you're doing it because you truly enjoy it, then continue to truly enjoy it. And it's all about creativity anyway. Dusty Gold says, Larry's killing it. All those long hours, just check out Larry's bags under his eyes. He's working it. Yeah. This is my channel. You want to know how hard I work? I look like shit. Joe Schmo says, hey, he's Marty of YouTube Bay Sports Talk. Thank you. Green glass full. Kings are going to slay the Warriors. Go Niners, go Kings. I love you, Larry. Slay the Warriors? Come on. Who are we fooling? Joey Nichols. Larry, I haven't heard your story yet. How did you become a scout for the Cardinals in the Canadian Football League? Wow. Where do I start? Okay, so I'm going to Sac State. I'm just watching football at a buddy's house, and his dad came into the room and said, "Who are you?" And I said, "My name's Larry Krueger." And he said, "Hey, you know football." And this guy happened to be the head coach for Sac State football, and then he said, "Hey, you should take my class. I teach a coaching of football class." And I said, "All right, I'll take your class." I took his class, and the final was, give us your organizational plan and so on and so forth. And I gave him mine. He said, "Man, you've thought things through. I like how hard you work and this and that. I could help you. If you want to do some recruiting for us, we got all kinds of people who send us tapes and this and that. If you're willing to help us, and I'd love to have you aboard and this and that." And so I said, yeah. So I started watching tapes and telling these guys who I thought was good, and we had a good recruiting class or two. And then he left and said, "I'm going to the Canadian League." And I said, "That's awesome." I said, "Way to go." He said, "I'm leaving Sac State. I've been there for 27 years. I said, "Coach, I love you, brother. Way to go." And he said, "You're coming with me." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, if you want to interview with the head coach, Kay Stevenson, you can. They got a quality control position available." And I said, I don't know Canadian football. And he's like, "Yeah, but you know football, and you know players, and you can help us." And then you got to interview with Kay Stevenson, who was the former head coach of the Buffalo Bills. And so I interviewed with Kay, and we talked for an hour or two and said, "Hey, I need a quality control guy that I can trust. I need somebody who's going to work long hours. It's hard work. You got to be smart. You got to be dedicated. You got to be able to work around football people. You got to work football hours. You got to be all in." I said, "Okay." I said, "Let's do it." And so and he gave me the job, and then worked there for a couple seasons, and then one guy left and went to the Arizona Cardinals to be the general manager. Their head coach was Buddy Ryan, and he said, "Hey, come with me and scout the West Coast for the Cardinals." And so then that's what I did. This is like 93, 94, 95, right around there, and then just kind of fell into the radio. So that was really it. And then once I started getting into the radio, I saw the conflict of interest and two kind of colliding careers, and just chose to go down the radio path for just being able to spend more time with my family and have a family, and not be on the road so much, to be home more. The one thing I get great respect for these personnel people is they spend a lot of time on the road. It's very isolated, and they spend a lot of time in hotel rooms and a lot of time by themselves, and it doesn't necessarily lend itself to having wife and kids and a family and a life and that kind of thing. So I kind of chose media over scouting, and as you can kind of tell if you listen to me talk about football players and prospects and that kind of thing, that's kind of where my passion lies. So there you go. That's the kind of the short story, and then I've been doing radio basically since the mid '90s till this moment, or until I was on the radio today. And now I've been doing the YouTube over the last year, and I really love it. So it's been a lot of fun. Joey Nichols says, Larry, you should do a whole show on your time as a football scout. It would be fascinating. So, it's a little bit about football, and it's also a little bit about people, and ultimately it's about figuring out the essence of the prospect. Everybody's got a million stats, but tell me what the guy actually is. And that's sometimes hard to figure out. So you got to be a little bit of a sleuth. You figure out who knows what. You got to talk to the film guys. You got to watch. You got to trust your instincts. You got to trust what you're seeing. And you got to work hard. You got to work really, really hard. Daniel says, thanks, Larry. Those are delicious. LOL. PK says, Larry, making me hungry for donuts now. Larry, what's your favorite muffin? Poppy seed for me. I don't go muffin. I guess I'd have to go like something with cinnamon and that kind of thing. Kind of a cinnamon sugar type thing. I'm not a big poppy seed guy. Oh, here we go. Roberto, light the beam. Kings are the third seed for a reason. Force Fox 5 is hard to stop. All that said, Dubs and 6. Now that made me laugh. Haruku Krug just reminded me who won that draft with Ryan and Dan picking the NBA wins and losses. I don't remember. I don't know. To ask. Mark Hope says, Larry, Farhan could have had Wotus managed for 2 seasons while Boch got his stent and knee fixed. Farhan wanted his own guy. He wanted his own guy. MF says, Wotus was good today. On with you and Willard on 95.7 The Game. Thank you. He was good. He was really good, I thought. PK says, Larry, your predictions, Giants buy or sell by trade deadline time? They love to buy. I think they love to buy, but they won't be in the race, so they'll do both. They'll sell off a couple pieces. They'll buy a couple things. That'll be my guess. They won't be like a big time seller, though they should be, but they won't be a big time buyer either. They'll leave us incredibly unsatisfied, is my prediction. Tom Pierce, is Greg Papa possible on the show? I can get Greg on, absolutely. Get John Lund on here right now if you want. Call him up this minute. Johnny and I are boys. Clarsard, LOL, Regina, and donuts on the Krug show. Vicky Pellich says, Dan, the tech expert from the draft. Greg Papa and Krug would be nuclear. El Camilo Dorado. 187. Is Larry doing a draft stream? What do you think? I absolutely am. Daniel Shabazz. I love Lance. What's that from? Is that from Anchorman? I love lamp. Tom Pierce. The establish the run DFS guys, Adam Levitan and Evan Silva, are really knowledgeable in the NFL. Okay. Good to note. Mark Hope. Yes, Larry, I work security nights and weekends, so I always got you during the weekdays. Very cool. Very cool. That's the cool thing, too. And I see a lot of people's chats talking about about the YouTube channel on 95.7 The Game. I'll look down and it'll be like, Larry, I love your 4K camera. Or, hey, what time is your show on with Damon tonight? And it's like right in the chat. But I don't mention it on the radio. But I do see it. I want you guys to know. Daniel Shabazz. Larry, you're not lazy. Dusty Gold. Larry's the original. Ford Nenner Josh. Larry, I love you, man. You're not lazy, Larry. You're not lazy. Don't be fucking lazy, Larry. Here we go. Daniel Shabazz. Larry, what's your favorite Mexican food or Chinese food spot by you in the East Bay? I don't have an East Bay place. I got a place in the city. Shulung, Xiaoloong. My buddy Jeff owns it. The pot stickers are amazing. It's in West Portal in the city. Shulung, Xiaoloong. Tiny little place. I mean, really tiny. So tiny that, like, it's like maybe 12 tables in the entire restaurant. The food is unbelievable. And I put Damon onto it. Him and his wife went. He's like, bro, that was fucking amazing. I'm like, I know. It's absolutely the best Chinese place ever. Now, it's Cantonese. So, some people like it spicy, like the Hunan. But I like the Cantonese, and it's just phenomenal. So check it out. My buddy Jeff owns it. Parents stumbled onto that place about 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Been friends with the owner ever since. Great guy. Best Chinese food in the city for sure. For sure. I mean, it's not even close. Eddie says, Larry wasn't lazy. Michael Taylor, huge Krug fan and Sac State alumni myself. Love hearing this story. There you go. Somebody mentioned, by the way, Club. Oh, maybe that was to Willard. Someone said, Willard, if you're ever in Sac, come to Club Toomey and the Pasty Shack on J Street in Sac. Great little spot. There used to be the Pasty Shack. It's still there. The Pasty Shack, the Barber Shop, and Club Toomey. That was always kind of a disconcerting thing. You'd go to get your haircut, and you'd have to fish your barber out of the bar. And if it was late in the day, that wasn't necessarily a good thing for your haircut. Be like, yeah, your barber's in the bar, and he's trashed. But he's coming out. Don't worry, he's going to cut your hair. Oh, thanks. Mark Hope. This is why Larry is such a legend. Yeah, exactly. We get this one. Larry, please rotate from Batman. Please rotate that Niners flag. We won't win a Super Bowl until you do. LOL. Very superstitious. Okay. How do you want it? You want it the other way? You want it with the border on the bottom? You want the white part on the bottom? Are you talking about the UK flag or the red one? All right, we got this one. Mark Hope. Larry is the king of the radio and YouTube. We're having a lot of fun on YouTube. We got to admit, it's been a lot of fun. And my oldest son, has put together some amazing videos on our channel. And I think the videos are maybe some of the best stuff we do. So please support those videos. He does an incredible job on those videos. MF says, John Lund was fired up last night on Unleashed. Oh, on Locked On. Johnny's Locked On. Good. Was fired up with a what? That they didn't walk Max Muncy with an open fucking base. The guy only had 3 home runs in the series. You might want to, I don't know, pitch around him. Joe Schmo. I love London Papa. The little old wheelhouse. I miss Lund's open. Not really sure what he's saying there. Got this one from PK. Larry, get Ryan Terrio on for the Tigers series, please. You know what? Terrio's a buddy. I'll give him a call. Maybe we'll get him on for Sunday. Terrio's a great guy. Great guy. Great giant, too. MF, is Will Wilson good? Seems like Farhan's only big pickup, and he isn't even up. I think he's pretty good. Line drive hitter. I don't think he's awesome by any stretch, but he looks major league. He should be up. PK, Larry, what do you think of the Masters and Tiger Woods? He's done. Well, he had to WD in the Masters. I mean, just the fact that he's even out there at all is amazing, considering that car accident. I mean, you know, what I think of the Masters. I mean, I love watching the Masters. Love it. Love how green it is. It was terrible that year when it was in November because of COVID. But yeah, it was incredible to watch. I watched the whole final. I watched the first round and the final round. I was rooting for Morikawa, but you know, what can I say? PK says, Larry, can you go scout the Sacramento River Cats? I could. River Cats, let's go check them out. Izon Diaz is down there. I know he rakes. So there you go. All right, that's going to do it for us. Hey, check me out tomorrow morning with Matt Barrows. Check me out tomorrow night after Giants and Tigers. Danny will join me. And then check me out tomorrow at 2 o'clock with Willard. Tim Legler will be in the house. We'll have a great Friday, strong finish to the week, sitting in for Dibs. Until then, peace. Have a great rest of your Thursday.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful, you gon' get exactly what you asked for. Here for whatever you bring me, get it.